across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome to the show. I bet you know what I'm going to be talking about today, don't you? Because have you ever seen scenes as chaotic as those from overnight in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta? Really, have you? I tell you what, I was looking at the video footage yesterday and I felt physically ill. I felt sick with fear at what is about to happen. Because mark my words, now these people have managed to break into Spanish territory. And now Spain controls the borders of Gibraltar. Oh yeah, that little deal was signed just over a week ago. Guess where they might come? Anyway, as we have learned that about 49,000 fighting-age men from North Africa have stormed the borders of Spain, I think it's about time that we can all admit this is not a refugee crisis. In the aftermath of those borders being stormed and swarms of young men entering Ceuta and Melilla have started looting, vandalising, pillaging, breaking into properties, attempting to squat. The residents are terrified. Businesses are in lockdown. Extreme vandalism is already taking place. This is an invasion. There is no other word for it. Now, make no mistake, this has been coordinated. 49,000 people didn't wake up one morning and all simultaneously decide today was the day they were going to try and scale border fences or swim a strait of water to enter a foreign territory. 49,000 people weren't all simultaneously lucky that there didn't seem to be border guards present. 49,000 people didn't know automatically and by some sort of strange psychology that there'd be coaches waiting for them to get on, to take them to that border. No, this has been coordinated in a very sophisticated fashion. Let me be clear. There is no refugee crisis. There was never a refugee crisis. In fact, so-called irregular immigration routes are acts of grey zone warfare. These are humans being used as bullets. Let me explain why. Sit with me and listen, because this is the truth that you are not being told. The enemies of the West, predominantly Iran, China and Russia, have been using illegal immigration for years to destabilise our continent and flood it with terrorists. We have seen the sights of Russia busing migrant men through Belarus to the borders of Poland. We know that these days terrorist organisations in the Middle East don't need to sell opium poppies, they make more money from people trafficking. We know that China was behind sending plane loads full of migrants into Central America to storm the borders into the United States. Since August 2023, the Kremlin's Wagner mercenaries have been operating the Africa Corps in the sub-Sahel region of Africa, destabilising states in order to seize key rare earth minerals and other assets, but also to begin triggering an exodus of migrants from those regions to flood into Europe. Islamist proxies provide tolls and protection fees, gaining much money in enabling routes, particularly across trans-Saharan Africa and throughout the Middle East. We learnt the other day that Iran's IRGC have bragged about getting operatives and terror cells into the UK via small boats. We know those small boats are also used to ship in caches of weapons. This is war, not a refugee crisis. So who is behind the 49,000 people storming the border of Spain? Well, some people point to Morocco. This is retaliation due to a dispute with Spain over the recognition of Western Sahara. Or is it? Might it be their neighbour, Algeria? Algeria, who buys arms from Russia. Algeria, who has a comprehensive deal with China over minerals, resourcing, intelligence. Algeria, who is ideologically in hoc with Iran and the IRGC. Algeria, who would love to drive a wedge between Morocco and the Western world. The point is, at this point, does it matter? What we know is that multiple countries now war game using migration to attack us. We might think of warfare conventionally as bombs, guns, weapons. Perhaps we think of cyber hacking or attacks on critical infrastructure. It's time we got real and recognised that war is being waged on us by our enemies using so-called asylum seekers. And what are we doing? Well, I'm sorry, our political elites are complicit in this invasion. The Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, gave amnesty to 500,000 so-called asylum seekers, not only creating a pull factor into the EU, but meaning that countless unknown individuals whose intentions are unclear, who have not been security checked, can now travel freely across Europe. Not only that, the Madrid Supreme Court just ruled this month that migrants entering Ceuta from Morocco can no longer be summarily returned to Morocco. I don't think the 49,000 who stormed the border knew that, but I do think hostile states were well aware that this would be the time to launch their collective operations. And the UN, what have they had to say? Well, they have said the rights and the dignity of these invaders must be protected at all costs. The rights and the dignity of people smashing through barriers to get into a country that they, frankly, have not been invited to and that they may wish to harm. What about the rights and the dignity of the people of Europe and the protection of their security and their civilization? And what have we seen in the United Kingdom? Silence from most of our political leaders. Let's brush it under the carpet. Let's pretend it's not happening. Or worse, Operation Scatter. The plan to disperse these unidentified fighting-aged men into every town and every city in the United Kingdom, placing them into HMOs in your street, in your village. We have a state that actively funds the NGOs aiding and abetting these humans who are being used as bullets. Don't take my word for it about the risk, about what we are being forced into. Instead, listen to Sarah Adams, one of the CIA's leading experts on Al-Qaeda, who has warned of plans for synchronised, coordinated October the 7th style atrocities in every town and every city across the West, across Europe, for a long time. And what do we have? Well, it's done. The terror cells are in place. The Islamists are flowing in. Not stopped by our military, not turned away by our governments, not put into detention centres, not properly security checked, but spread throughout our continent to lie in wait to launch their attack. We need to have an honest conversation about this. We cannot keep saying asylum seeker. We cannot pretend young men from Morocco are escaping a war zone. We cannot just automatically jump to the conclusion that these poor people are running away from something. Perhaps they're running to something. Our civilization is at stake. The Trojan horse has entered the gates. The work is done. We are now filled with men who could potentially, at any given moment, attack us on our streets, in our homes, in our places of work. And this has been going on because of the grey zone warfare of Iran, China and Russia for a decade. But it's also been allowed to happen by our own politicians, our own supranational organisations, our own charities and quangos, and all of their useful idiots who keep championing the cause of the so-called asylum seeker. Keep this clip, share this clip. Make sure everybody knows that what they might call an asylum seeker, I call a weapon. We've got to wake up because this is far too serious. We are under attack. This is war. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's quite important that we have this conversation. I've been saying it for a long time. Anyone who's listened to my shows regularly will be used to me talking about the plan for synchronised terror attacks, used to me mentioning Wagner mercenaries, used to me pointing at the operations of the Chinese Communist Party, used to me telling you how terrorist organisations now make more money out of people trafficking than illegal drugs, used to me saying that the plan to scatter these people around the country is perilous, reckless, and that one day the hour will come. And now we have it. The footage, the horror, tens of thousands, and they're still flooding in now. And they'll come to Gibraltar. Oh, yeah. Our hostile states know full well that in that deal with the EU, Spain now controls the borders to Gibraltar, British territory. When these 49,000 migrants, and onwards they come, the number will go up, leave the enclave of Ceuta and get into mainland Europe and spread, where do you think they're going to come? Well, thank goodness that at least one European leader has her head screwed on, Giorgia Meloni, who's, of course, created outrage by saying that she now wants to pull out of the Schengen Acquis with regards to the border with Spain. Who can blame her? She has no intention of having this mass wave of potential militants enter her country, and good on her indeed. She says Italy will not stand by and watch. We are convening the relevant bodies, and following meetings we're prepared to intervene with extraordinary measures to defend the borders and the safety of citizens, including the suspension of the Schengen area with Spain. The EU have allowed those borders to remain open. When Angela Merkel said, come one, come all, refugees welcome, and they flowed in, the mass exodus, the vision of apocalypse. And we were made, weren't we, to cheer them on, to pretend that we're doing a great act of charity, not clapping a welcome to the people who are going to end us, end our way of living and end our civilization. They're complicit. They're complicit in war being exacted against us. My heart goes out to the Spanish in Ceuta, boarded up in their homes, terrified. Finally, Spain has mobilised its army after Pedro Sanchez initially refused to call it a national emergency. They've now sent the military, but what can they do? According to a newly statuted Spanish law, well, they can't even send these people back. My heart breaks and I feel sick. I have a knot in my stomach. I've got a pressure in my sternum because what I saw happening yesterday felt like a turning point, a point of no return. And I don't think I'm being hyperbolic. I think we can all see now, and we can all see how our political elites are in on it, lying to us about it, gaslighting us, censoring us, demonising us, punishing us for even noticing what they're doing. Why? Why do they want to destroy us? Why do they look the other way while we're being invaded? Only they can answer that. But I'm afraid that answer it they must, because the evidence is in front of our very eyes. If you want to get in touch with the show, it'd be great to hear from you. 03444 991 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate, and you can also use that number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. You've got to write the word talk before you send your text. Let's read out some of your messages. If we do not act right now, we are finished. From the tip of Norway to the tail of Italy, we are finished. Of course, the Department of Justice is now using legal action so we can't see the statistics of how many foreign nationals are committing crime in this country. Well, what we do know is 1 in 4 sex crimes and rapes are happening at the hands of foreign-born men. 1 in 4 people in Britain are not foreign-born, but they will lie. Spain, Sweden, Norway, it's a war zone. Malmo. Rival drugs gangs coming from Kurdish and Somalis and Sudanese bombing each other. It's war, writes someone else, but it might also be the shock Europe needs to slam the borders shut. Let's hope it's also the end of the Spanish Prime Minister and his amnesties. Is it going to be the shock to slam the borders shut? We've had that shock. We keep having that shock. We had that shock 10 years ago, right during the Brexit referendum, when Nigel Farage had that poster saying breaking point, and we saw the scenes of the mass exodus then from the Middle East. That wasn't enough. Repeated terror attacks, cars, vans being driven into pride marches, Christmas markets, lone wolf stabbings. It's always just mental health, isn't it? Stephen Millings in Belfast says, Alex, can you start a campaign for the media to stop calling them small boats? They're as small as Trump's ego and as big as the Houses of Parliament. Again, we're talking about grey zone warfare. Where are these mega dinghies made? China. Every single word, Alex, says Jason in Keswick. 100%, Alex. I'm not making it up. The reason you're agreeing with me is this isn't an opinion. I have laid out facts. This is empirical information. This is the truth that we are being denied, that we need to know because it's for our safety and our protection. The BBC are already understating this. They're saying people are trying to cross the border. When are they going to wake up? We're already invaded and it's petrifying. Dave from London says, well done, it's about time someone said something. The globalist agenda is well and truly underway. Excellent speech, says Kevin Southampton, 100% correct. It's time to wake up big time. Wayne in Frodsham says, Alex, you're spot on. I've been saying the same for years, but looked upon as some sort of conspiracy idiot. Well said. The conspiracy are the mad loons who still stand there and think that 49,000 young Moroccan men are somehow refugees. Morocco! You can go on EasyJet down Morocco. I ain't a war zone. I go to Morocco every year. It is not a war zone. Germany, Spain and France are complicit in all of this. The lefty leaders are ruling this continent. It's true. It is all the leftist-led countries who seem to be in on the conspiracy. Morning, Alex. Superb monologue this morning. We're in such a mess. The world is in a mess. We need a Georgia Maloney in this country. I've moved to rural Wales. And I get it's not far enough away. Love the show, says Gary in Powys. It's not going to be far enough away. Not in rural Wales, not in the Outer Hebrides, nowhere, because Operation Scatter is bringing these men to a town or a village near you. Anthony says, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But as you ask, why? I don't know. I don't know why. Why would our own political leaders want to destroy our civilization and put us in the hands of barbaric Islamist terrorists? We're going to take a short break now. Following up, we're going to be speaking with former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, Nigel Evans, and see if he might have some answers as to why anyone would want to destroy their own continent. That's after this.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A little bit of breaking news for you, it seems to me, which is that France are mulling closing the border with Spain, as Italy is also considering. You can't blame them, can you? But I'll tell you one thing that they might not have priced in, but the hostile states running this stuff would have done. On the 12th of June, just gone, the Pact on Migration and Asylum came into force at EU level. 10 pieces of legislation with rigid relocation quotas. So the fact now that the 50,000 odd that have broken into Ceuta under Spanish Supreme Court law cannot be returned to Morocco. Also, under recent Spanish legislation, 500,000 of these people are given amnesty. So if they can't be returned, and they're technically in the EU, well, in the Schengen Acquis, they can travel around. And closing the borders, my friends in France and Spain, is not going to help you right now, because you've signed up to supranational legislation at EU level to take your fair share of these people. So they're going to come to you anyway. And can I just say, thank goodness for Brexit, because we're not involved in the relocation and resettlement scheme with the EU. But don't worry, the French gendarmerie will get them into boats in Calais as soon as possible and push them to our side of the channel. Let's speak to Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Nigel, my first question is, I've been saying it for years, when are we going to have a government in this country which calls this so-called irregular immigration what it is, which is an act of grey zone warfare?
Well, you're not going to get it from this government, are you, Alex? I mean, it is an absolute crisis, not only for the 85,000 Spanish people who live in Ceuta. Just think about that. 85,000 live there. And yesterday they took in 49,000 illegals. That's sort of the equivalent of 35 million people coming into the United Kingdom in one day. That's how disastrous it is. There's also, as you know, Alex, another enclave up the road called Melilla. That's another Spanish enclave in Morocco. It's not going to be long before the illegals start going in there as well. And you are absolutely right to point out the real danger for the United Kingdom is that when these people cross the 10 miles between Ceuta and Spain, then, of course, they have access to Gibraltar as well.
Right. And because we've just signed that deal that Spain now controls the borders of Gibraltar, they know what they're doing, the hostile states behind this.
That's right. And Fabian Picardo was clapping his hands when that deal was done, which means, rather perversely, that when we fly into Gibraltar, we'll have our passports checked, and they have the right, the Spanish, to stop us going into Gibraltar, a British overseas territory. And yet, of course, all these other illegals, when they get in onto mainland Spain, can then access Gibraltar. I do hope that Fabian Picardo announces the closure of that border immediately when you've got countries like Italy and France looking at closing their borders. And from a British perspective, we should hope that they're going to do exactly that, because if they don't, then, of course, it's going to be British problem as well as a European Union problem, because they will then be waved off from Calais by the gendarmes, who we are paying £500 million plus a bonus every year for them to stop the illegals. And as we have seen over the last couple of days, the gendarmes are refusing to get involved with people on these boats aiming for the United Kingdom. I mean, it's an absolute disaster. And what have we got? We've got Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, is actually going to go to Ceuta today. To do what exactly? He's not going to see many Spanish out on the streets.
Probably going to hand out residency to all of these people.
Well, he's helped to generate all of this, of course, because, as you quite rightly say, one of the first things he's done is to give amnesty to 500,000 people who've illegally entered Spain. And we really have got to get a grips with this. Alex, I know what the Prime Minister's view is on pork scratchings versus scampi fries, but I have yet to hear what he's going to do about this crisis, the crisis that we are facing in the United Kingdom now on a daily basis. And it's going to get worse. And I do hope, you have quite rightly said, that thanks for Brexit, we're not part of this relocation scheme, except we are sort of part of France's relocation scheme as they wave off these illegals on boats aiming for the United Kingdom. And France won't take them back. This one in, one out thing is an absolute sham.
Nigel, I was so emotional yesterday. I got home and I felt like I couldn't speak or think. I lay on my sofa and I felt ill. I felt physically sick at seeing these pictures because I know what I'm looking at. I know with those pictures, that is an Islamic invasion of Europe that's being aided and abetted by the left-wing political elite. They're watching it. They're enabling it in real time. And I don't know how this stuff is reversed. I'm 42 and I know that that's it. That my country, my continent, my civilization, my freedoms, my way of life, my safety, my ability to walk around the streets where I grew up freely, I know it's over. I know it's over because of what's going on and what's happening. And we're watching it in real time, and this is war, and this is being conducted by hostile states, and I cannot wrap my head around how we have a government, and frankly, successive governments, not just in the United Kingdom, but across the West, of the left wing particularly, who, for some reason that I just cannot fathom, at the very least, are turning a blind eye to this. At worst, they're actually complicit. I don't know. What is going on?
As you can see there, Alex, all of these are young males. And you're absolutely right. Do you remember the day a couple of years ago when Yvette Cooper said, oh, no, she would take in some illegals? Well, I don't quite remember her taking in any. And this is a real disaster for the whole of Europe. Do you know the one thing that many Remainers mistake about people like you and I? They think that we don't like Europe. Well, we do like Europe.
I love Europe.
We love European
I want
countries.
Europe to remain.
That's right, absolutely. What we don't like is the European Union. And thank goodness the British people had the common sense in 2016 to vote to leave the European Union. Of course, the political masters did everything they possibly could to have kept us in one way, shape, form or another. But Andy Burnham does need to make it absolutely clear that we will not take in a single person of the 49,000 that are entering this Spanish enclave.
We should take nobody of anywhere, not of this 49,000, but anywhere. We need to declare a national emergency. We've learned that IRGC have shipped operatives in. We know this. The counter-terrorism czar, Robin Simcox, told the previous government, Rishi Sunak, that guess what? Guess what? Terrorists use illegal routes. Well, of course they blimmin' well do. Of course they do. I have it on good authority from people within the intelligence community that caches of weapons are dropped over the edge of those boats, and at night, they've got trackers on, at night with GPS, caches of weapons are being picked up in the channel and brought to shore. That's the way a lot of weapons got shipped into Gaza. I have it on great authority from people in the intelligence community that among the people who have broken into our country are 500 jihadist trainers. I have it on good authority from people in the intelligence community that we have so-called summer camps happening around the United Kingdom where young Muslim men are being taught how to do parkour, you know, running in and out of buildings. They're being trained in paintballing, you know, firing guns and trained in flying drones. I don't think that sounds like a summer camp. I think that sounds like a jihadist training camp. And guess who's been telling the UK this? American intelligence. No. And nothing's being done. We are living through, in real time, an Islamic invasion into this country. It's going to end with blood spilled in our streets. And I don't understand that the Prime Minister isn't talking. I don't know if has Kemi Badenoch said anything today? Has she piped up?
Well, I know Kemi will be absolutely appalled by this. And as you know, Alex, the one thing that she has made absolutely clear is that when the next Conservative government comes in, we will leave the ECHR immediately. Because part of the problem has been, as you know, under Rishi Sunak, the reason why he failed miserably to send people to Rwanda is because the human rights lawyers were all over it. They must be rubbing their hands waiting for the next boats to come in. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. But Kemi has stood up to this and said, no, that's it. We're going to leave the ECHR. The human rights lawyers can go. And we are going to be focusing on sending these people back. I mean, I've got the solution, Alex, on this, which is that the Burnham government ought to recall Parliament immediately, because if you remember, he wasn't really keen on being Prime Minister and Parliament sitting at the same time. He thought he'd give himself...
Oh, he's not a fan of democracy or accountability, but never you mind. Who needs that anyway when you live under left-wing tyranny?
He is the Messiah without a mandate, that's for certain, but he should recall Parliament. Emergency legislation to leave the ECHR should be introduced, and then we should be deporting the illegals to third countries if we can't get them back to the country that they've come from. We should be using the international aid budget in order to, as leverage, to say to some of these countries who are not really interested in taking back their own citizens that they can forget getting any money off the United Kingdom if they don't play ball.
I hate to remind you of this, Nigel, but it's 2026 right now. We know in 2016, Nigel Farage put up a big poster warning of breaking point and mass migratory routes into Europe and what that was going to do to our country. That's 10 years, and in those 10 years, 8 of them were of a Conservative government with big majorities who could have done all the things you've just said. I'm afraid to say that multiple governments have been complicit in what is going to be the destruction of our civilization. They will not be forgiven. It will not be forgotten.
I totally agree with you, and I've got to say I am delighted that we're in new management now. I mean, Rishi Sunak should have had the guts to have used the legislation himself and then seen which members of Parliament were prepared to vote for it, because the reality has been that we are now seeing more than 50,000 a year coming into the United Kingdom, and we're having to pick up the bill on this. Never mind the fact that we've got people, illegals coming in, we don't know who they are, that they're coming with a different culture, we already know that. Some of them are ending up in prisons because of some dreadful acts that they're perpetrating. They seem to think that it's okay. It may go on in their countries, but we certainly don't want them or their cultures that are alien to ours coming in. And do you remember, Alex, if I had said this several years ago, I would have been called a racist. But this is now a wake-up call, not just to the United Kingdom, but to the whole of the European Union. I hope Meloni does shut the border between Italy and Spain. I hope Macron shuts the border between France and Spain. Isn't it perverse that as I'm speaking, we will have hundreds of thousands of British people going on holiday to EU countries in the Schengen district, and they are having to wait an hour and an hour and a half to get in because of the border securities within the Schengen district. Isn't it perverse that British people are being told that they have to wait whilst 49,000 illegals coming from Morocco are coming into EU territory? That's what it is.
I'm afraid there's blood on the hands of all the political elites. You know, after things like the Bataclan, when we knew all the terrorists are coming out of Molenbeek in Brussels and travelling over to France, the border should have been controlled then. After Ariana Grande, that horrible, disgusting attack on little girls, they always go after the girls. We should have got real about who was in our country and their ideologies then. It goes on, and they are just continuing to contribute into the destruction of the country. And you know what? A lot of these political elites, they'll live out the rest of their lives in gated communities, in leafy neighbourhoods where the terrorists are not put in HMOs because the rents and the property prices are too high. They will not be the ones slaughtered in the streets when terrorists put up roadblocks and shoot people through their car windows. It won't be their daughters being sexually harassed outside the school gates. It won't be their houses, their streets, their businesses, their communities and their lives that are destroyed. No, they will live out in security with money in the bank as we watch the country that we once called home be taken over and become unrecognisable. But I'm going to live through that. I'm going to watch it in real time. I don't know what to do. Nigel, thank you ever so much. I'm just so deeply depressed today, but there you go. Nigel Evans, thank you ever so much for joining us. Oh, Alex, please tell the lovely Nigel Britain can't survive until the next election. We're in the final death throes. Alex, please stay strong. We need you to speak for us. You're an amazing voice for the ignored. Please keep forging on and fighting this. I cannot leave the UK to my grandchildren in this state, and I know you feel the same, says Joe. I do feel the same. I feel for you as I'm feeling the same way, says Merv. Lovely, lovely Merv in palliative. You know the position I'm in. And I said to my Alex, I've known what was coming for 25 years. It cost me my friends and family, and I feel your pain. I leave Jesus. I know I pray to God every day. Last night I was praying to God about this crisis, praying for the protection of Christendom and this continent. It's all I've got left. All I can do is pray and hope the Heavenly Father will be on our side. Alex, your opening monologue made me cry because it's true, says Sam. That's just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Oh, it's so good to have Will Geddes in the studio. I feel safe.
You should.
Can you never leave my side? Because apparently we're living through an Islamic invasion of Europe, and I can't really see things are getting any better.
Yeah, I'm getting my suit of armour out.
The video footage.
It's horrific.
I've never seen... I mean, we saw scenes like this about 10 years ago when they all came from Syria, when Angela Merkel said, come on, come on.
But nothing quite as bad as this.
But what we're seeing in the aftermath of this invasion...
Yeah.
I mean, I woke up, at one point during that, I woke up about 2, 3 in the morning and I had to look at the phone. I had to see what was going on.
Yeah.
And it was everything I expected. They're climbing up ladders, breaking into buildings, smashing into people's private residences, tearing up, you know, pulling out road signs, smashing up cars, setting things on fire.
Breaking into people's homes.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time I saw something like that was probably when I watched World War Z. You ever seen that?
It feels like Children of Men, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's...
I mean, it's worse.
This is war, isn't it?
And do you know the most surprising thing, Alex? The thing that's really disappointing me, and this is why people like you are so important, to get the news out there and for people to be able to discuss it, is all the mainstream media aren't even covering it.
No, they're not covering it.
Their front pages do not have any feature on. There's stuff about the World Cup, about the Clooneys.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, I mean, their home burning down in France. There's nothing. You know, you've literally got to go 10 pages or more before there'll be even any coverage. And the other thing which is disgusting me, Alex, is they're referring to it as mainly men. I haven't seen any women or children in any of this footage. Have you?
Look at it. But the thing is, you and I have been speaking about this on air and off air for years.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about this back in my days at that other channel we don't talk about.
Yeah.
At least 5 years we've been talking about this, you and I. At least.
Yeah.
About the fact that it's hostile states and terrorist organisations behind these migratory flows.
Yep.
And that irregular migration is grey zone warfare.
Yep.
That it's Wagner mercenaries, the Africa Corps in sub-Saharan Africa, who runs all this in Libya, in Algeria.
Also,
I'm wondering what's going on now.
It's not just Wagner. So, OK, we know Wagner's involved. We also know that Unit 700, which is part of the Quds Force, which is part of IRGS, the Iranian Republican Guard, who are the logistics unit for their operations running overseas. And what they have been doing is basically infiltrating and strong-arming themselves into the illegal immigrant trafficker gangs. So basically putting pressure on there, both either financially or physically, to control that. And the reason why they're controlling this, and you and I have discussed this before, like you said, Alex, we discussed about contraband. And anybody would be naive to think it's only people that are moving over on these boats, that there isn't weaponry, there isn't drugs, there isn't other malicious items which potentially could be damaging to our country, which includes, obviously, potentially explosives, which could be utilised. And the IRGC have been using, basically, their strong arming of the traffickers to move many of their operators into this country as well. So, you know, to echo Nigel's statement yesterday, Nigel Farage's statement yesterday, everybody has to wake up. But that's not referring to the general public. I think the general public are savvy and wise enough to know, yes, we are really subject to the most considered insurgency ever.
Right. This is, I mean, let's put it in real terms, OK?
Yeah.
Because we know that China plays a big part in this. They make the mega dinghies at the very least, but we also know that China operates flights. They were the ones operating flights for a long time to Central America.
Yeah.
With randoms from the Middle East who then tried to force, and Africa, who tried to force their way into the United States, hence build the wall.
Yeah.
Biden let it happen. Trump said, not under my watch.
Yeah.
As you said, we know Iran are part of all this, and Iran's got their big mate Algeria right next door to Morocco.
Yep.
And I wonder whether the long arm of Algeria is part of what is going on right now.
On this most recent insurgency into Spain, there's a very large number of Algerians within them. It's not just Moroccans. People might think, oh, it's just Moroccans. No. I've been in Morocco a number of times, and yes, it's still a developing country, but it's not that hideous.
Morocco is an ally to the West. They're building loads of solar farms and a giant electrical cable up to the UK so we can have lights on. Morocco has been an ally to us in the Maghreb compared to all the neighbouring countries, which are hostile and partner with Iran, Russia, and China. And so I wonder whether some of this is coming from Algeria, although other people in French intelligence have said to me, no, we actually think this is Morocco kicking back because Spain wanted to recognise Western Sahara. But, it doesn't matter. What it exemplifies is the fact that other countries use illegal immigration as a tool of punishment, as a weapon.
Yeah.
But what I cannot get my head around, we're talking very candidly about caches of weapons and terrorists which are being shipped in at a rate of hundreds a day into this country.
Hundreds a day.
Hundreds a day into this country. And we are dispersing them around the country through Operation Scatter, not into safe places where people can keep an eye on.
No.
Into residential houses.
Literally,
and then the government, the Home Office, refused to tell local authorities where these HMOs are, how many there are, and who's in them.
Yeah.
I feel like the government is complicit in terrorism against its own people.
To be honest, Alex, I have to agree 100%. I mean, if it wags its tail and it barks, it's a frickin' dog, okay? And what we've got here is a situation where you're absolutely right. There is also this bureaucratic red tape which is preventing the Ministry of Justice, the Home Office and the Border Force also collating and releasing, it's not to say they aren't collating, the figures of illegal immigrant-associated crime and how that fits in the demographic of crimes which are taking place across this country. To say proportionally which crimes are being propagated or perpetrated by which groups. Now, it's the only sort of barometer and litmus that people are able to utilise is what they see on social media. Now, let's not even start there. You and I both know with things like the RICU unit, the Research Information Communications Unit, which is a third-party deniable intelligence asset for basically disseminating messages from the Home Office to the general public via social media. And we, as the taxpayers, are paying more than a few million for these third-party agencies to develop these messages. One's got to go, absolutely, to what you've said. What is the government actually doing here? It's not just complicit, it's actually manipulating a situation of potential civil unrest. And I've said this, you and I have discussed this. I think where the government can't protect us, we will stop protecting ourselves. And this is not a call to arms that I'm trying to make.
No, but you know what?
We got to be really worried here because we're on the tipping point.
Yes, I agree that the big risk here will be eventual vigilantism, which is not something I condone, endorse or encourage.
No, nor me.
But, we're talking about the crimes being committed by people who've come into this country. And yes, they're part of black markets of drug dealing, hand car washing, slavery, sex trafficking, sex attacks on young women, thefts, rapes. And that's horrible. But all of that will look like a drop in the ocean the minute we have the Molotov cocktails, the roadblocks, the street shootings and the coordinated beheadings, because that is what lies in wait.
We know that Hamas have also had some part to play in some of the illegal immigrancy. And we also know that Islamic State and Hamas and many of the joined-up agencies, which have been financed by Iran, let's not forget that, want to replicate October the 7th. Here in the United States and in other parts of Europe. And we're allowing all the actors that could play a part in recreating that into this country. It is, I've tried to sit on the fence a little bit and tried to keep my sort of neutral security assessment view on this. But, Alex, I'm finding it difficult. I'm finding it very difficult.
I'm jealous of people who live in ignorance about this and they're going about their normal lives with no idea of what's going on. I'm jealous of them. I was sitting at my local pub yesterday, as I do every evening, and they always say to me, my neighbours, "Oh, God, you always talk about politics." "Oh, no, here she goes, talking about politics." And I'm like, this isn't politics. This is the fact that you have no idea while you sit here drinking your pint that we're at war.
Until an HMO gets set up in your village, which is altogether possible.
Oh, well, not just that. All these new build houses, there's going to be 3,000 in my town. And you know that, you know, between 20 and 40% by law have to be ring-fenced for social housing. And you know who gets priority over the social housing. So they are coming. They're coming, they're being spread around, they're being sprinkled like little unexploded landmines in every town and every city. And I don't know if you are aware of Sarah Adams, who is the Benghazi special for CIA.
Yeah. Sarah Adams is, I'm a big follower and advocate of her. She was a CIA targeter, and she used to target terrorists, and her main sort of fix was very much on the Benghazi situation. People remember it from the movie that came out. And yeah, she's all over it. But she's been saying this for a long time.
I've written articles about this 2 years ago. That she has warned that Al Qaeda 2.0 are being led by Bin Laden's son. I spoke to an expert on the IRGC the other day who said, yeah, the head strategist for Al Qaeda now lives in Tehran. Despite them being technically opposite ends of the Islamic spectrum, although terrorist entities, they now are together funding. They've got all those weapons that we left behind for the Taliban. They've shipped all their operators in, and she has said repeatedly, because she is the one with the most intelligence on Al Qaeda, the plan that they have is not to fly aeroplanes into tower blocks. It is for October the 7th attacks in every town and city in Europe and in America. And thank goodness Trump is doing something about it in America and consistently warning Europe about what's going on. But it's too late. I actually think it's not if, it's when.
The huge challenge that we've got is we used to look at conventionally, because I mean I've been in this industry over 3 decades, is that you had Al Qaeda, you had Islamic State, you had Boko Haram, you had Al Shabaab, you had Abu Sayyaf, you had the Houthis, you had Hamas, you had all these various different pockets of terrorism groups which were doing their own thing. Now, that's just to name a few. There are many, many more names I could certainly list away. Now, what's happened is they have now all consolidated under what they call the Muslim Army, which is where your nightmare scenario that we're predicting now is far more achievable. And in terms of the glory that it was, you know, conventionally of Islamic State would claim, you know, that they were behind that attack, or Al Qaeda would claim they were behind that attack. It's now, we will arbitrarily give whichever group the opportunity to claim it. But it's all done under the same umbrella.
And we saw, didn't we, during the Southport riots, the police say to the young Muslim men taking to the streets with weapons, do you mind going and putting your arms back in the mosque?
Yeah.
Oh, Will, I have no idea when it's going to kick off, but I know it's going to.
It's pretty damn
and I'm
depressing.
Terrified.
It's pretty damn depressing.
It's harrowing. It's harrowing.
And the thing is that I think we've got to remember our government supposedly has a social responsibility to us, this country, this nation, our culture. And they're betraying us in that regard. And it's not just the Labour.
It's betraying. It's more than
this is the time for Andy Burnham. If he really wants to prove his worth, now is the time for him to actually take drastic action. Because, to be honest, Conservatives before weren't.
Where are they?
I don't know.
The only person who seems to have made a statement is Nigel Farage, which is to be expected, because he's been saying this for a decade and been persecuted for a decade.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to take a short break. After the break, I'd love to hear from you. We're going to take some calls. 0344 499 1000. See you in a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, let us take a call. Will is still with me. In fact, we're just going to detain Will. I'm going to keep him forever. Forever.
Against my will.
I don't feel safe at night, so I'm just going to keep Will as my own private James Bond. Let's speak to Mike in Southampton. Hi, Mike.
Hi there. What I'd like to say, Alex, is that we won't change anything. I listen to your programme a lot. Nothing will change until we make MPs and Prime Ministers accountable. Because at the moment we have 1 day's democracy and 5 years dictatorship.
We don't even have 1 day's democracy. I don't really consider 20,000 people voting for Andy Burnham in Makerfield, 0.03% of the population, anything akin to democracy, quite frankly. I think it's a communist coup.
I'm talking about generally, not this particular instance. But what I'd like to see is that MPs are made accountable for what they do. For example, if they lie to the public, they should be jailed. If they act for another country on top of ours, they should be jailed.
You know, I agree with those points in principle, but the concern I would have over such legislation being brought in is the left wing would use it as lawfare against the right wing. It'd be the right wing being accused of colluding with Russia. It'd be the right wing accused of lying to Parliament. It'd be the right wing who would constantly be under attack in order to keep them out of power. That's the problem, because they don't play by the rules. We follow the rules. For them, they think they're exempt from them. So be careful what you wish for, Mike. But, you know, it is true, Will. I do actually think that there are certain world leaders who should be in the dock, including, well, Pedro Sanchez now and Angela Merkel. It's utterly abhorrent what they have done to this continent, and they won't pay the price. They will get away with it. There seems to be zero accountability, as well as all the faceless bureaucrats in Brussels. Now, listen, we've got to go to an advert break, but we do get to keep you on the other side, don't we? Which will be wonderful. After that, we're also being joined by investigative journalist David Shipley for a big old kumbaya of communal catharsis. So why don't you join in? Back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I kind of feel like that music's a little bit too cheerful for Apocalypse Now or whatever's going on across Europe today. But there you go. We do need to try and maintain our sanity, so perhaps a little bit of levity in the form of a musical bed is what we all need right now. I'm joined in the studio now not only by the security specialist, our very own living, breathing James Bond of 2026, Mr. Will Geddes, but also David Shipley, investigative journalist. And we've got some breaking news, and it's quite apt that you've come into the studio as this news is broken on screen, because this is your kind of cup of tea, my friend. This is your portfolio. The Metropolitan Police say Southport killer Axel Rudakabana has been charged with 3 assaults on prison staff at Belmarsh in 2025. Well, that's clearly why he's being put in a padded cell where he can write on the wall with his faeces in Broadmoor, one assumes.
Yeah, I mean, this is following on, remember, for an alleged attack by him, which was quite a serious attack by all accounts, on an officer at Franklin, where he was being held initially. So he is an incredibly violent, dangerous man, and he will continue to be. And I think, you know, it's probably safer to have him dosed up in a padded cell. But you know, frankly, it's not reasonable that prison officers have to deal with men like this on a day-to-day basis.
He's an animal. He's an animal. He's an evil creature. Let's talk now. We're basically just going to stick on what's gone on in Ceuta for most of the programme, because I think this is such, what is the word, an apocryphal moment? Yeah. It really is something. When I saw that video last night, I said, this is the beginning of the end. It's not, I don't believe this is going to be the beginning of when things change, because guess what? Have we heard from Kemi Badenoch? No. Has Andy Burnham said anything? No. Nigel Farage has, so perhaps he deserves to be listened to.
It's time to wake up, everybody. No, I really mean it. Just have a look at these scenes. This is happening today in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. Yep, it is Spanish territory. Tens of thousands, maybe more, breaking in to that little part of Spain. The authorities seemingly powerless to act, and yes, of course, they've declared a state of emergency. Bear this in mind. Earlier this year, Spain gave an amnesty to 500,000 people who'd illegally got into the country. The messages from Spain are clear. You know, come in and you'll be allowed to stay. Some of you might remember a poster I put out 10 years ago called Breaking Point, where I showed vast numbers illegally breaking into the European Union. I made the point that if we vote for Brexit, we'll have the power to stop those people coming here. Sadly, the Tories failed us, Labour have failed us. Believe me, unless we get a reform government, those scenes you're seeing in Spain today, many of those young men, lots of them dangerous, will be heading towards Calais and coming to our country too. It is time to wake up. This is a battle for the future of our civilization. I can't put it any more plainly than that.
I mean, David, it is. Yesterday, apparently, was something called Gold Throne Day in Morocco, which celebrates the enthronement of a king whose particular title I cannot remember in the 90s. So it's a bank holiday. Everyone celebrates the monarchy in Spain and has a nice day off. So perhaps that's why border security might have been a bit lax, and perhaps Algeria was taking advantage of that, or perhaps Morocco's behind it. But what we know as well on Gold Throne Day is they tend to pardon prisoners, release people from prison, something we're getting very good at as well in this country. Around 2,000 odd is what I've heard. And what we do know from some of the people who have been grabbed and interviewed, who have broken through the borders into Ceuta and Melilla, is a number of them have said, oh, I'm actually a fugitive. I'm running away. I've escaped from prison. Yeah. And a lot of these people crossing into the UK on small boats are just that, aren't they?
And of course, that can be the basis for an asylum claim in Britain, by the way.
Right.
If you're facing some severe punishment back home for any
we've
crime.
had the Egyptian murderers, haven't we, going like, oh, you know, they framed me.
They'll hang me if I go back because I murdered some people. Oh, well, you can stay here at Hillsborough. But I think, you know, often people sometimes act as if language about the end of civilization is overly dramatic, or invasion is overly dramatic. And I think one of the failures we have in the modern world is that we think history's over. And actually, throughout history, mass movements of population have had standard effects. Generally, the the civilizations that migrated into cease to exist. You know, it happened when the Western Roman Empire fell. It happened when the Eastern Roman Empire collapsed, when the Arabic invasions happened. It's happened in Central Europe on numerous occasions. When vast numbers of other groups of people move into a territory, the people who were there before cease to be a civilization. And history hasn't stopped. Human nature hasn't stopped just because we've got technology and the internet. And these waves, the vast waves of people, have to be stopped, or it will be the end of the West.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Morocco. Will, I want to get your view on Morocco from a
Sure.
security perspective. It's a place
Yeah.
I've been on holiday. I go regularly. I never walk around by myself. I always make sure that a man with me. I've got a friend called Omar there, and we have to go to the local police station, register, and he has to get a little certificate saying he's my mate and he can accompany me through the souks, because they've cracked down a lot on harassment in cities like Marrakesh. And Morocco's a country that, by and large, I love. I tend to go to the south. I like going out to the Atlas Mountains and hiking, and down into the Sahara. And the food's delicious, but it isn't safe. Like, you do have terrorism there.
Yeah.
And of course, attitudes towards women are very backwards. But in terms of from a security perspective, because I'm looking at this sort of invasion into Ceuta, and I'm trying to point the finger of blame somewhere, and I'm not sure whether I want to point it at Rabat yet.
So I've been going to Morocco probably since the late 90s. I've been there. I know it quite well. I've been across quite a lot of the country, namely because I did a thing called the Marathon des Sables twice there, some years apart. The general Moroccan people are generally pretty nice people. They're fairly inert. They're not particularly threatening. The royal family there is pretty well set up. It's got a reasonably good infrastructure. There are parts of it which I wouldn't be advising a single woman went to. Casablanca is a good case in point.
We'll get on to that in a minute.
Yeah, we can talk about Casablanca. I think you have a story to share on that one, don't you?
Yes, it's my least favourite city.
I would say Morocco is generally, and the Moroccans are generally not bad people.
Yeah, I agree.
But the problem you have with Morocco is the porous borders. And it's the porous borders, particularly with Algeria and also with Libya. And that whole crescent of northern Africa is one of the biggest problems you have. Islamic State, for example, has been very prevalent certainly in Libya. Libya is still very prohibitive to go to in terms of a country.
Well, Libya's just run by terrorist organisations.
Exactly, and it's all tribal, and to be honest, to try and get across the country, yes, and Wagner Group are obviously there in force as well. Algeria's always had a problem, and certainly I've been to Hassi Massoud, I've been to, again, Algiers itself. The whole crescent part of Africa is dangerous. So if you look at all the way through to Tunisia and Egypt, you look at how people would get across over, for example, from Algeria and Tunisia into Sicily, using certainly boats that have been going over there and getting into the main boot of Italy. Certainly for Libya, and also Algerians coming in via Morocco, again, short channel to cross to get into Spain. And so I wouldn't necessarily put the blame at just inert nationals from Morocco. I would put it against a vast number of other individuals who concealing themselves under the Moroccan badge, if you like, to get in.
Bad actors. It's true. I mean, Morocco as a state is by and large our ally compared to other countries in the Maghreb. It is.
Yeah.
And it tends to be less Islamist. It suffers Islamist attacks. I remember the bombing in 2007 of Café Argana in Jamal Fnar, the main square in Marrakesh. But by and large, Morocco is pro-Western, which upsets its neighbours. Its neighbours hate it.
Yeah.
But it isn't a safe country of itself. Now explain to us what you went through in Morocco.
Yeah, well, back in 2014, I got stuck in Morocco for 5 days in Casablanca. And there were quite a lot of other American and British chaps there, and we got bored in the hotel after a couple of days. We decided to go out for a night out in Casablanca, which you do.
Play it again, Sam.
Well, indeed, yes. And I think that's what we thought it was going to be, you know, this sort of...
That's what everybody thinks it's going to be until they go there.
And also, I think, particularly in Casablanca, but a lot of Morocco, there's this strange divide, isn't there, where the rich Moroccans insist they're French and refuse to speak Arabic, and they hate the poor Moroccans who speak Arabic, and it's got a very weird...
You've got posh new neighbourhoods and the tatty market in the middle, which sort of makes you feel a bit on edge.
I mean, the move from Marrakesh to Casablanca, you couldn't get more diametrically opposed.
Right, yeah, they're very different.
But we went on a night out, and towards the end of it, I and this other chap were the last men standing. We sort of piled out and got into what we thought was a taxi. And after a little while, I realised we weren't actually going back towards the hotel. We were, in fact, sort of driving out east, into the desert. And so I sort of looked at my map and showed him and realised, and there was sort of obviously a moment, particularly in 2014, because it was quite a lot more sketchy then, where I felt pretty afraid. And then he and I had to work together to get the driver to change direction. Yeah.
Wow. What did you do? How did you work together?
That's a standard kidnapping format, to be honest.
Mid-nap.
Take the tourists off into the desert until you actually don't unless you refuse to hand anything back, they'll leave you out there.
Probably one to discuss off air, I think.
OK, well, there you are. Guys, thank you ever so much. It's time for us to take a break already. I just want to keep everyone here, have my own little kidnapping. This is a live hostage situation. I'll just add more and more people in.
Definitely.
More and more people. We're not taking a break, actually. No, we are going to add more and more people in. But our next wonderful guest is going to be brought in virtually rather than in person, because I don't think we've got enough furniture or space anymore in my little closet of common sense. So let's welcome him via the magical medium of Zoom, Alp Mehmet from Migration Watch. Alp, how are you today?
I am very well, Alex. How are you?
I'm not sure I can hear Alp myself. I'm not sure whether the audio was working, if that's my earpiece, or if we're having a bit of a Zoom malfunction. So while we figure out technologically what may or may not be happening, we will carry on talking amongst ourselves. This is why it's always nice to have friends to play with in the studio. So when things go wrong, as they always do in live broadcasting, as I can hear you, Dee, and I just couldn't hear Alp, that we've always got something to fall back on. So fall back we shall. Let us talk now about, essentially, the crime situation in the United Kingdom, reflecting upon... We saw last night, didn't we, live crime scenes in Ceuta as these people stormed into that enclave and immediately started trashing it, vandalising it, tearing things up. We saw a lot of this take place. Again, something else we've brushed over, and we decided just, not talk about it because it was inconvenient. We saw this during the World Cup, didn't we, after football matches, with, guess who was doing it? North Africans, trashing places like France, even in the streets of the United Kingdom when Morocco lost their match. Out they came, bashing up the neighbourhoods.
But the bizarre thing about that, I mean, when I saw all that sort of turmoil kicking off in Edgware Road, if you know Edgware Road well, which we do, this is their own community. And it's like, OK, fair enough, you kind of understand if you go into another community and start tearing it up, but to actually... SH1T where you eat is a bit bad, isn't it?
But there is something, isn't there? Like, we don't get given the statistics. They're deliberately suppressed or kept from the public domain when it comes to foreign nationals and crime levels. But it's evident to me, having lived in Brussels, for instance, right? And you see certain crimes taking place and also sexual harassment on the streets, all the rest of it. You look at places like Malmo in Sweden. It's very clear to me, empirically, that there is a greater uptick in endemic criminality among foreign-born communities than the domestic-born community.
Yeah, and it's particularly foreign-born communities, right? I think there isn't a crime wave being committed by Norwegians or Canadians who've come to Britain, and we know that, right? There,
or the Japanese.
Or the Japanese. It is obviously true that different groups of peoples have higher and lower levels of impulse control and more or less controlled in their behaviour, more or less law-abiding. If you travel the world and do business in different parts of the world, it's obvious. I think you have to really work hard to imagine that away and to deceive yourself.
Oh, you have to work hard to try and get that information out of our own government, it seems. It'll take anybody to court to try and prevent us ever knowing the reality. David, Will, thank you so much for both being in the studio. I feel like a lucky girl indeed. I'm going to feel very unsafe when you've gone. Oh, I was so privileged to have two lovely, gorgeous, handsome, erudite and tough men with me. Can I keep them forever? Unfortunately not. We're going to go to our advert break now, but don't worry, because we will be catching up with Alp Mehmet via Zoom just after.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Oh, I've lost my playmates, but don't worry, because I've got a new one, Alp Mehmet. But he's joining us via Zoom, sadly not in the studio, here to protect me as my knight in shining armour, because guess what, Alp? I feel like I'm going to need protection. Now, talk to me and contextualise what we have just seen happening overnight in Ceuta, because it isn't the first time, is it, that there have been a huge sort of migrant wave breaking into that enclave. I think about 10 years ago it happened, but back then it was 6,000. Today, about 50,000 and counting.
Yes, and counting. Just to put that in some sort of context, that's roughly the size of Luton or Reading. 50,000, it's getting on for the size of our army, frankly. It's hideously worrying, it really is, because all those people who can now effectively walk into a European Union country, and they have been doing it for a while. Potentially, they will end up in France, and many of them will make their way to us. And that's really what I lay at the foot and at the doorstep of the European Union and France, all the European Union countries, for the absurd Schengen arrangement of free movement, whereby you can enter in Spain and, frankly, by the afternoon, you can be in France. That's what's got to be addressed. I mean, there's lots of other things. With regard to Spain, they just don't know what they're doing, frankly. This is a far-left government, Pedro Sanchez. He's got people like El Masaiz, who's one of his ministers. They all believe that the rights of migrants outweigh the rights of the Spanish citizens. Does it remind you of anything? Mm-hmm. That is what the problem is. They don't know what's going on because, having said that they're going to give an amnesty effectively to around 500,000 people, which in itself is astronomical.
Ridiculous.
It turned out to be 1.2 million. I mean, these sort of people, frankly, should never be in government.
They are not just being lackadaisical and a little bit too compassionate when it comes to these people who we're being told are asylum seekers, but clearly are not in any way, shape or form running away from any sort of danger. I mean, the amnesty was horrific. The fact that the Supreme Court turned around and said, well, do you know what? If Moroccans enter Ceuta, they cannot be summarily returned as they were before. That was just earlier on in this month. And it isn't these Moroccans themselves who suddenly are, you know, deeply aware of legislation being passed in Madrid or in Strasbourg. No, it's rather more hostile states who know exactly what's going on and know full well that now is the time to pounce. Now is the time, if you want to really disrupt Europe, that if these people flood into that enclave, legally, Spain can do nothing about it. If they then move from Ceuta to Gibraltar, legally, Britain can do nothing about it because we've handed over the management of our frontiers there to the Spanish government. And I just don't understand. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, about migratory flows, and I'm going to keep repeating it ad nauseum, ad infinitum, until I'm blue in the blimmin' face for the next however long it takes, that these are not asylum seekers. This is grey zone warfare, and it has been from day dot. From day dot.
Absolutely. That's exactly the point, frankly. People come over, they say, I am fleeing persecution, I am fleeing from all sorts of horrors, take me in. They've got no documents, they've got absolutely nothing to really persuade us of their identity. And yet we accept their word for it. Alex, would you go to a doctor and say, you know, I've got this and that wrong with me? And he says, yes, well, I'm a doctor. I am qualified in exactly that, and I will treat you. Wouldn't you be wanting to be satisfied that that is actually a doctor with the right qualifications? And yet, here we are letting people in on their word, on their say-so.
But it's more like...
It's ridiculous.
For me, what is the thing that I think we've got to get real about is not only the fact that these are unidentified fighting-age males who are deliberately throwing any plausible way of identifying who they are, where they came from, you know, in order to corroborate their sob story. What I'm interested in are the mechanics behind the illegal people trafficking. Because, you know, Chris Phillips was running around in Dover the other day, and we know that there 752 migrants crossed over yesterday, and we know that there have been various deaths as a result of, you know, people getting into unstable vessels or trying to climb over high border fences, etc. And he says, well, you know, people are going to die. Well, does he not realise that actually the process of leaving Eritrea and getting to Libya and all the checkpoints which are controlled by the Wagner mercenaries or hardline Islamist terror organisation, all taking their pound of flesh. Many people are plucked off those migratory flows, including children who are taken away to have their organs harvested, and women who are taken away to go into, if they're lucky, domestic slavery, and if they're unlucky, sex slavery. And this whole process, until Europe gets real about managing its borders and recognising that this is nothing to do with asylum seeking, that they are complicit in essentially genocidal terroristic crimes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Pretty much what I said as well. We've got to get real with the sort of people that we're accepting. We're not only letting them in, we're making them comfortable. We are then treating them in a way that, well, we would an honoured guest. We are letting them with money in their pockets, giving them pocket money to wander around at will, and a lot of them putting people like you in particular, women, at serious risk. That is absurd, that we are prepared to take that sort of chance with the people that we're letting in. We've got to stop that. And the thing is that once people arrive and they haven't got any documents and they can't satisfactorily explain why they're coming here, then they're not refugees anyway. They're not asylum seekers. They're migrants who are not qualifying to enter. And any migrant who doesn't qualify to enter the country is returned from where they came. There is absolutely no reason, frankly, that those who've arrived here, having spoken to them, they haven't got any identity, having established that they've got no real satisfactory explanation for why they're here, apart from the fact that they're migrants, then we should be sending them back. That's no change in law required.
There should be no way of them getting in the first place. If Poland can put up giant wire fences and patrol their border with armed guards, then so can we. If that means having armed guards on the beaches of Dover and instantly detaining anyone breaking in, so we should. Now, Al, you and I think first properly met and started, you know, working in the same circles in about 2013, I would estimate. And I remember back then, when I was head of media for UKIP, a lot of our conversations centred around migration, but looking at migration from Eastern Europe and looking at migration from the Balkan states. And we have seen the aftermath of that. There's always a lag time. But we've seen how much of the criminal underworld in the United Kingdom is run by Albanian gangs. But the trend has changed, hasn't it? Now, when we look at migration statistics, the newcomers coming into this country, they're not EU, and they're not necessarily Commonwealth. What we are seeing, it appears to me, and I don't know if you've got the data on this, is just mass migratory waves coming from extremely Islamic countries, Islamist countries.
Well, many of those who are coming from countries like Pakistan. They're coming from Afghanistan. They're coming from sub-Saharan Africa, where a lot of them are also Muslim. They're coming from Eritrea, from Ethiopia. It used to be, but Eritreans are by and large Muslims. So a lot of those coming from poor countries are indeed coming from Islamic countries. And a lot of them are, if not controlled, certainly influenced by Islamists. That is something that we should all be worried about. The population, the Muslim population of this country is now well over 4 million. A few years ago, it was only 3.5 million. It's growing at such a pace that really, it's no wonder where I live in East London, you'd be surprised if you walked out and you didn't see people who were very clearly Muslims. So yeah, it's not the fact that there's anything against Muslims. That's the family I come from. But it's the speed with which it is happening, the rate at which it is growing, and indeed many of them coming here without really any desire to integrate, become a part of the
But arguably,
community.
we could say if we were taking the professional class from Muslim countries, if we were taking Pakistani surgeons, if we were taking just the Afghan translators, if we were taking the westernized Syrians who once upon a time wore miniskirts and held cocktail parties and are now being forced to wear a burqa, that would be a different matter. It seems to me that when we are allowing people to come in from Muslim countries, we tend to be taking the people who are more likely to hold extremist and Islamist beliefs because they are the lower echelons of society. They're the ill-educated, the ones who don't fully speak English, the ones who are not westernised, the people who've been brought up in barbarian conditions. And that, to me, is the greatest risk of all. We have no discernment. We seem to have no way of discriminating in a positive way between someone who will add value to our society, regardless of their creed, their colour and their culture, to somebody who, frankly, poses a direct threat to it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening. We're not looking at people to see how they're going to integrate. The point at which we say, OK, you can join us. Most of them are poor, not terribly well educated, and large families coming from parts of the world that we just described, where there's absolutely no way, apart from not speaking the language, there is no desire to integrate because they can live as they lived in their own countries within their own communities. That's the issue now, that the communities, the migrant communities, are such a size, they're at such a point where people from those countries where those communities are made up, really can arrive, and they're effectively moving to a better off part of the country that they've come from.
Alp, thank you ever so much. I always love your candour and your fearlessness, the brilliant Alp Mehmet from Migration Watch. Let's move to a slightly different story, but staying on a theme. We were talking then about, well, let's call it the Islamification of Europe, because when you have more and more people coming in from Muslim countries and the demography changes and communities begin to change, they become more Muslim. So that is Islamification. It is not a dirty word. It is a factual descriptor. And what we know is that when people come from certain Islamic countries, they tend to bring with them their ideologies, including their geopolitical standings. And so we've seen a huge uptick, haven't we, in pro-Palestine movements and the hate marches weekly on the streets, the massive increase in anti-Semitism out of the J7 nations, the 7 countries with the biggest Jewish populations outside of Israel. The increase in anti-Semitism in the UK is the highest, and I wonder why that is. Probably because we also have the highest count of Muslims who share very unpleasant attitudes towards Jews at times. Now, we've been told that some of these organisations that are jumping up and shouting for Gaza are directly sponsored, aided, funded, or at the very least have connections to terrorist organisations and indeed foreign hostile states. And so it seemed to be very sensible when one such organisation called Palestine Action managed to break into one of our critical RAF bases in Brize Norton to attack a standing military aircraft, and in doing so also went about attacking police officers at one point with hammers, that they were called a terrorist organisation. Great, done. Finally, if people were shouting about supporting Palestine Action, they could be plucked out of demonstrations, dragged off to a police cell, had the riot act read at them, probably released, but at least we'll have a record. But apparently the co-founder of Palestine Action has been told she can take her case to the Supreme Court to challenge the Home Office's decision to ban the group as a terrorist organisation. And this is what is alarming me. She has tried to challenge this on two grounds. Thankfully, they've both been refused. But she's trying to challenge it on the grounds of interference with freedom of speech. Funny, because all these people who shout globalise the intifada, etc., would be the first ones to talk about hate speech and non-crime hate incidents, wouldn't they? But also on freedom of association. So why is it that the High Court has now buckled? How come it is now going to Tony Blair's Supreme Court? And are they going to, out of sheer wokery, because the judicial system seems to be infected with sympathies towards Islamism, is this going to be turned over? And what does that mean? Does it mean a win for the IRGC and the Muslim Brotherhood? Let's speak to Nicole Lampert, who's a fantastic journalist, about this. Nicole, today's stories, you know, Diane Abbott's back in the Labour Party, Palestine Action may be deprescribed, we got the invasion from a Muslim country into Ceuta, and I just think, wow, what a picture it is painting of the direction of travel of this country. Palestine Action are a terrorist organisation and must stay so. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, I think the thing with them is that they're violent, and they were getting worse and worse. And this, although they are called Palestine Action, really they are anti-Western. And I think that's one of the things. And it's not, you know, your previous conversation about Muslims, but this is they are hand in hand with the far left in this country, and the two groups are anti-Western. And so Palestine Action were prescribed after the attack at Brize Norton, as you said, millions of pounds worth of damage, and that's what they'd like to see more. They want to attack our arms industry at a time where we as a country are talking about our defence industry and the world feels more dangerous. We also saw, you know, a violent attack on a policewoman, and as well as many violent attacks or you know, nasty attacks on Jewish property. So I think it's ridiculous that you can go on the streets, march for Palestine, do all the other stuff you want to do. You know, I'm not sure if you're talking today at all about Boy George being cancelled for doing a pro-Israel song, but he's been cancelled from Jesus Christ Superstar, the musical. So, you know, you can push these all the way, but at the same time, the violence is why they should be prescribed.
Do we have any idea about connections that Palestine Action might share with unsavoury organisations? Because we've had it told to us that a lot of the pro-Palestine marches are sort of directly connected to the choreography of organisations such as the Muslim Brotherhood, who use a great amount of funding and a great amount of influence, setting up various so-called charities or faith schools or community leaders, representatives, you know, the Muslim Association in whatever particular public service it may be, to spread their influence, spread the narrative of grievance. Oh, well, after October the 7th, look what Israel are doing to us, and using it to ramp up tensions on our streets. Do we have any evidence that connects Palestine Action to hostile states and terrorist groups?
I'm not sure there's absolute direct evidence. I think there's just, you know, links and links and links. So a lot of these groups a lot of these pro-Palestine groups and even the demonstrations, they're being financed by, yes, the IRGC, by the Muslim Brotherhood, but also from America, from far left organizations are also funding them. And these are all groups that have their only interest really is stirring up kind of revolution on the streets and anger and creating discord in our society. So that is one of their things. But also we've seen the whole Palestine issue really radicalize people into kind of pro-terror support. And so we do have this mad thing. So actually, most of the people that are being arrested for the Palestine action, for demonstrating, they wear these placards saying, "I am against genocide." Not that any, how does being against genocide? Not that what is happening in Israel and Gaza is a genocide, but even if you were, why are you attacking British weaponry? Yeah. They're being taken for absolute fools by people that hate our society.
Right. I mean, what is so staggering is our own Prime Minister made one of his first little things to go and do, to sit down and sing Kumbaya with Gary Lineker, and started moaning about, under me, there'll be no bombs, there'll be no bullets sold to Israel. And I was like, you are about to become the blimmin' Prime Minister, and you don't even know that we don't sell a single bomb or single bullet to Israel. In fact, we just sell a little bit of plastic to cover some buttons and widgets that are dual use, and we depend upon Israel to provide us cutting-edge military technology, particularly in the domain of cyber, and intelligence that our security services use to make sure we don't have terror attacks over here. The man is a buffoon, honest to God.
Well, it's all just, it's really disgusting, performative nonsense, and I wish that they would just really grow up. And of course, it's all about grabbing votes, the same with Diane Abbott, the return. It's all about just shoring up the base. But I wish that sometimes we would have someone who would just talk seriously and say that. Yeah, say, Israel, even if you don't like what's been happening in Gaza, they are fighting a terrorist organization. That is their intention. And it's, of course, it's very sad that civilians are being killed, and that is what happens in war. Instead of just, disgusting, they're so disgusting. But also the fact is that with the weaponry that as you said, the bits that we sell for the F-35 airplanes, that what the people fishing for is for us, if we remove ourselves from that, then we remove ourselves from being able to get those planes ourselves. So again, this is about hollowing out our own defence system to make us weaker at a time when we need to be strong.
I totally agree. I don't know, we're going to hell in a handcart. We're not just staring into the abyss, we're walking directly into it, and I don't know what we can do. Hey, happy times. Nicole, thank you ever so much for joining us today. We're going to be taking a short break. Listen, if you want to get in touch with the programme, I'm going to sort of squeeze in some messages here and there as well. 03444 991 is the number to send me a WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to send a text. If you're going to text, write the word talk before you write your message, and ping them in my direction because they won't cost you anything, and it's always great to hear your input. Let's do a couple now before we go to break. There's a couple of really good ones. But thanks, Gareth. Gareth says, stay strong, Alex. You speak for so many of us, and never forget you're a national treasure. I'll tell you what, Gareth, I get home, and after sitting here talking about doom and gloom for 3 hours and all the adrenaline it takes, I just collapse into the loving arms of my local pub and talk absolutely nothing. In fact, they always moan that I talk too much, but yesterday I was as silent as a mouse. I just sat there with my cryptic crossword, minding my own business, just trying to relax of an evening. Sean in Bridlington says the invasion of Ceuta was almost a third as big as D-Day, FFS. Well, probably will reach D-Day proportions soon enough because it's 50,000 and counting. David in Leicestershire says, morning, Alex. I agree with every word you have said this morning. Disturbing, but thank you for your insight and your honesty in calling this invasion out. I fear for my children and my family. What scares me the most is the fact that if we speak out or take any action, our own police, councils and judiciary come down on us like a ton of bricks. Also, all the data and information about those who have invaded is edited or hidden. I just don't see how we can continue for 3 more years. I don't think we can continue for 3 more hours, quite frankly. I kind of feel like it's gone now. It's done. I honestly had such a sick feeling in my stomach yesterday watching that footage because it just felt like the point of no return. And I'm still waiting to hear from Andy Burnham and Kemi Badenoch. Oh, cat's got your tongue, has it? Nothing to say today, Kerry. You're usually chopping off all the time about something. Don't seem to be standing up and making a noise about this, are you? And Andy Burnham, well, you haven't even said the word immigration since you know, conducted your communist coup and entered number 10 Downing Street. So, frankly, I didn't expect much more from you. And the legacy media, they're not talking about it. They occasionally put up a picture, go, look, some poor refugees have gone into a Spanish enclave. They're not talking about it. And this is war. Europe's just been invaded. Oh, well, never you mind. Nothing to see here. Paul says, and this is quite an interesting message, we need the government to explain why Starmer scrapped the Rwanda scheme on his very first day in office without first reviewing whether it could be improved or made to work, given that around 700 million had already been spent setting up. Why did he abandon it rather than adapt it? What evidence did he have that cancelling it altogether would produce a better outcome? Well, especially as now we are Rwanda, that France is using us as the third nation, that they're deporting all of their illegal entrants to in order to be processed, and we're not processing them, we're just going, yay, come live wherever you want. And the second thing Paul says is we also need to ask the question of why on earth have we got a Home Secretary who controls illegal immigration when she and many members of the Labour Party frankly belong to a society that advocates for open borders. Yep, there you are. Sums it up, doesn't it? We're taking a short break now. We're going to take a little break from this story and dip our toes into the Greater Manchester mayoral election, a seat that has been vacated because the mayor of... well, the Mayor of England now, whatever he wants to style himself as, has decided he doesn't need to do proper democracy or make his mates stand down. He'll stand down. And there he is, magically in number 10. Poof, just like that, with his Tony Benn treasure chest of various little cosplay costumes he likes to wear to make his TikTok videos. We're in safe hands, folks. We're catching up with one of my favourites, Conservative peer and pollster Lord Robert Hayward, just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Here we go. I fashioned myself a white flag during the advert break because there's just been breaking news that the Chinese mega embassy that's going to be built over the quantum computing cable in the City of London, where they can spy on everything we do and basically take down our whole financial industries. Yeah, that's been given the permission to go ahead. Here we go. Give up. Bye. Come on in, invade us. We're gone. It's over. Done. You know, we'll just be sold to the highest bidder. All right. Well, let's distract ourselves temporarily while we await the results of the Greater Manchester mayoral election. How might that go? I think we're not about to hear until the afternoon, but let's see if we can make a few predictions. We're joined now by Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and pollster. How do you think it's going to go?
Good morning. I'm most hurt that you said that I'm one of your favourites. I was hoping I was your favourite.
Well, with an accent like that, you know that you have a very special place in my heart, Baba.
I know I do, and I have great affinity for the West Country for both of us. So yes. Coming more seriously to the question you asked, as you said, the counting is going on at the moment in each of the centres for each of the boroughs of Greater Manchester. At this point, there are stories beginning to circulate that Labour are doing very well, but my suspicion is that those stories are being put out by Labour. I think they will win in the end, but don't believe anything one hears at this stage, because obviously each of the parties will put up the best face on the figures that they get initially.
One assumes the main contester against Labour was Reform.
It was most likely to be Reform or Greens. Both parties have hit difficulties in one form or another recently. The thing that has frustrated me most, and I spoke against it in the House of Lords, was that the Labour Party rushed through a change in the voting system for this mayoralty.
Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
So that instead of it being first past the post, which would have been until a few weeks ago, it is now a transferable vote system, so people have second votes. So, no, I didn't realise I was breaking news to you, but that is the position, is that a few weeks ago, as I say, the Labour Party rushed through a change, which I regard... there are reasons to argue about the voting system, that's fine. But do not rush through a change because you think you are going to benefit from it.
This is gerrymandering. This is rigging an election. I'm sorry, that is rigging an election. This is using Greater Manchester as R&D to see if they want to do that at a general. And I said this in the beginning. The Labour Party will get into power and they will change the nature of our plebiscite. They will change the franchise. They will give it to 16-year-olds if they think that will get them over the line. They'll move to PR if they think that will get them over the line. They will give it to, I don't know, all migrants who arrived yesterday on a dinghy if they think that will get them over the line. That is absolutely appalling.
Well, when you and I last chatted, we discussed the question of compulsory voting as one of the changes that they're actually talking about. But if coming back to Greater Manchester and accepting the points that you make in relation to changing voting systems, the likely result will come out sometime mid-afternoon, recognising that we have this alternative vote system. I'm not going to go into the details, it's too complex, but it is likely to be Labour versus either Greens or Reform in second place, and the votes will then be redistributed. And I expect Bev Craig, who is currently the Labour Mayor of Manchester, to become the Mayor of Greater Manchester, which is all the boroughs, Wigan, Oldham, etc.
Oh, Lord Hayward. I love spending time with you, whether it's in person or via Zoom, but you did just break my will to live a little bit there as I realise that Greater Manchester has become a rigging laboratory. There you go. Fantastic catching up with you, and thank you for dropping that truth bomb. I am going to keep my eyes peeled for what else they're going to get up to. I told you, this is in train. This is what the left wing do. When they can't win, they change the rules of the game to make sure they always win. There's no such thing as democracy to them anymore. No, 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 no. It's non-negotiable. You don't need that. We get in the way of their global socialist plans. Sickos. Right. On that note, yeah, let me remind you as well, I've sort of dismantled my little white flag, but yeah, the new Chinese super embassy in London can go ahead after a High Court challenge against the decision to grant planning permission was dismissed. High Court's having a field day at the moment, isn't it? Being overruled on Palestine action, tried to stop this mega embassy. Shut up, High Court, we don't need you. Does anyone in this country, does anyone in the Labour Party like us? Or want to put the needs of this nation first? Or are we just going to be sold off to the anti-Western axis of Iran, Russia and China? I think we know the answer. OK, we're going to be taking a short break, but I'm delighted to say that, well, I call everyone my favourite, don't I? But perhaps he is my absolute number one. Ralph Shawhammer joins us after the break.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, do you know what? Maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe there is a little glimmering dust mote of hope somewhere sparkling in the distance, catching the corner of my eye. Because at least Italy has turned around and said, we may close the border with Spain. And France are also considering the same. Apparently, the French Interior Minister, Laurent Nunez, announced today that he's ordered increased controls at the border with Spain over fears that thousands of migrants who reportedly force their way. Where we use the reportedly here, Politico? Reportedly? There's video footage. Crying out loud. They can't help themselves, can they? Anyway, they have a mobile unit that's on duty around the clock. Great. I'm sure the French are going to sleep well in their beds tonight, because I'll tell you one thing. I said earlier, actually, that I believe it was June the 12th that the European Asylum Treaty, the pact, came to fruition, became statute across Europe, where, that's right, 10 legislation pieces with rigid relocation quotas. So even if you close your borders now, oh yeah, those guys in the Maghreb who also speak French are coming your way soon, Mr. Macron. Let's speak to the wonderful Ralph Scholhammer. How are you doing, Ralph?
Alex, good to see you.
Always wonderful to see you, my darling. We're at war, aren't we? With what's going on. That was an Islamic invasion of Europe, aided and abetted by the powers that be, including the EU, including Pedro Sanchez, because I have no other word to describe 50,000 people driving themselves by force into Spanish and European territory.
I mean, I don't know how you feel, and I don't know how your viewers feel, but I'm tired. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, we had a terrorist attack in Germany, we had a stabbing in Paris, we have now the situation in Spain. It's the same all over again. Every week, the same story. It's tiresome.
It's tiresome, but it's terrifying. It's terrifying because it seems to me that the political elites are complicit in this invasion. And it's an act of grey zone warfare. It has been for 10 years. And what do we see time and time again? Decisions being taken by Supreme Courts, decisions being taken by Prime Ministers, decisions being taken in Strasbourg, decisions being taken in Brussels, which seem to always say, shut up. These men are coming from hostile countries and we're going to help them, and you're not allowed to say anything about it. And I think now the clock is counting down to the end of our civilization. I genuinely do.
You know, the main reason for this, I believe, is because they don't take the problem seriously. They pay lip service to it, but they don't genuinely believe that it is a problem, because for decades they have told us it isn't a problem. Always think about Enoch Powell in 1968, who was expelled from the Tories for saying the truth. And then you had the entire line of politicians and political movements for 60 years have said, guys, this is not going to end well. Guys, you have to change course. This is going to be very bad. But they continued to plow ahead because the intellectual class, let's be very honest about this, the intellectual class got bored with their own civilization, they got bored with their own people, and they thought it might be fun to try something new. We are part of a massive experiment that was driven, and I can say this only again, by our academia, by our media, by our cultural class, who believe that being British or being German or being Austrian is just too boring. It's too bland, right? There's nothing exciting about it. And yeah, I admit it, a society with mass stabbings, gang rapes, cars plowing into parades is a lot more exciting, but I believe that many people could do without that kind of excitement and without that kind of diversity.
I could definitely do without it, if I'm honest. Where do we go from here? What is Spain going to do? Sanchez is on his way down to Ceuta to probably just gas bag aloud a load of nothing. He didn't want to declare it a national emergency, but I understand they are allowing some degree of military presence.
Yeah, well, what did you expect, right? I mean, when you make a law that gives a majority of people that are illegally in your country the right to become legals, that's the biggest incentive structure you can have. Imagine yourself, hypothetically, Alex, because that's a stretch, but imagine yourself being a human trafficker. And you can choose trafficking those people to Italy, to Greece, to France, or to Spain. You will say, let's pick Spain, because if those people can make it to the mainland, if they can make it on Spanish territory, they can immediately apply for legalization. Now, I know. Now people say, no, Ralph, you're wrong. That's only if you spend a certain amount of time in Spain. How exactly will they be capable of telling somebody from Algeria, somebody from Nigeria, whether or not that person has been in Spain legally, has been in Spain illegally for 6 months or 6 years? The whole point of this person being there illegally means that nobody knows how long he's been there. So this is how stupid they think the European people are. They say, oh, if you've been in the country illegally for 6 months, you can apply. If you just came across the border yesterday, you can't apply. How do you find out how long that person has been in the country? And they said originally 500,000. It's now up to 1.2 million. It's going to be 1.5 million by the end of the year, and it's going to be 3 million if you include family reunification.
Do you know, Ralph, you're always right about everything. And I'll tell you one thing, you're never left, and that's why we love you. Ralph, thank you ever so much. Let's get you back on the programme as soon as possible, because he really is incredible. Alex, this is the final straw, says unknown anonymous messenger. We have to act now for the lives of our grandchildren. Not just the lives of our grandchildren. Let me make plain, for our own lives. Because I'm telling you, the lag time on all of these people who have come illegally into the United Kingdom and are sweeping their way into Spain right now, the lag time on the consequence of that is shorter than you think. We are at great risk. I'm telling you, I'm sorry to scare you, but someone has got to speak the truth to you. You deserve to hear it. Back after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, there we go, our pleasant little music so we can all feel jolly today on Friday. Today is the day that Europe ends. That's right. Put it in your calendar. Let's remember it. Let's celebrate it and go out and have a wonderful summer. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy your family. Enjoy everything that your ancestors have struggled and strived 2,000 years to build for you, because it ain't going to last very long. Because we now have a full-blown invasion into Europe. And guess what? Nobody seems to care. Legacy media, they don't care. Oh, there we go. Thousands of migrants enter Spanish territory, says the BBC of just one little picture. I haven't seen them talk about it once properly. No one else seems to want to talk about it. That's all I'm going to talk about, because it is so critical. Today marks a turning point for European civilization when you can have scenes, as we have seen in Ceuta, of an estimated 50,000 men fight their way into Spanish territory just after the Supreme Court in Madrid said, well, anyone who tries to do that can't be sent back. Also, let's remind you as well, just after that absolute bonehead Sanchez, dirty Sanchez, decided to give amnesty to 500,000 random illegals, which ended up being 1.2 million. Also, just after the EU have drawn up their so-called asylum pact with 10 legal stipulations with rigid relocation quotas. So they're just all going to be spread around now, and they're going to keep coming in, by the way, because Sanchez, we don't seem to be doing anything. I ain't seen reports of, you know, soldiers with guns, like they actually do to patrol the borders of Poland. That would be sensible. And what about this country? How are our politicians reacting to one of the greatest crises, an Islamic invasion of our continent, frankly speaking? What do you think they've got to say about it? Well, I'm going to read you what Kemi Badenoch has put on social media, shall I? Andy Burnham must stop faffing about and allow new oil and gas licences before it's too late. 20 minutes ago. Got nothing to say, have you, Kemi? I thought you wanted to leave the ECHR. I thought you took immigration seriously. I thought you were the big tough girl under new management. Things aren't going to happen like they used to in the new Conservative Party. Sorry, did you miss the headlines this morning of tens of thousands of fighting-age men pouring into Spain? Did you also miss the fact that actually, not long ago, we signed over the border control of Gibraltar to, oh, that's right, Spain, and the fact that Gibraltar is a hop, skip and a jump away from Ceuta? Have you missed all this vital stuff and the emerging crisis? Because normally you're quite chatty, aren't you, love? Normally you're little Miss Sassy. And you seem to be a bit timid all of a sudden. What about Andy Burnham, right? Our new Prime Minister. I mean, he doesn't like talking about immigration on the best of days, does he? Because he doesn't plan on doing anything about it, so best not mention it. And the wee small hours of this morning, when I tuned into radio at some ungodly time of day, it was some replay of something or the other, and there was some geezer on it talking about, well, you know, Andy Burnham's doing so well, he's not mentioning immigration. It's only extreme right-wing parties who are trying to make an issue out of immigration, and Andy Burnham's playing a very clever game by not talking about it. You sick, cynical, twisted, horrible man. You're literally presiding over the wreck and ruin of our 2,000-year-old civilization, everything that it stands for, because you want to win the next election? Get over yourself, you cretin. Anyway, let's see what he has to say, shall we? Real time. Andy Burnham, what do you have to say? Politics isn't working for places like ours. I'll change that. Ashton in Makerfield from the 18th of May. Oh, here we go. 1 hour ago, I promised to take power out of Westminster. I meant it. Yes, you did, son. You decided to evade accountability altogether, setting up number 10 of the North. Anyway, a load of bump, nothing on the fact that, well, we're at war, essentially. That's how I see the situation. Shall we see how the one political leader who's had the backbone to actually address this issue, shall we see what he thinks? Roll Nigel Farage.
It's time to wake up, everybody. No, I really mean it. Just have a look at these scenes. This is happening today in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. Yep, it is Spanish territory. Tens of thousands, maybe more, breaking in to that little part of Spain. The authorities seemingly powerless to act, and yes, of course, they've declared a state of emergency. Bear this in mind. Earlier this year, Spain gave an amnesty to 500,000 people who'd illegally got into the country. The messages from Spain are clear. You know, come in and you'll be allowed to stay. Some of you might remember a poster I put out 10 years ago called Breaking Point, where I showed vast numbers illegally breaking into the European Union. I made the point that if we vote for Brexit, we'll have the power to stop those people coming here. Sadly, the Tories failed us, Labour have failed us. Believe me, unless we get a reform government, those scenes you're seeing in Spain today, many of those young men, lots of them dangerous, will be heading towards Calais and coming to our country too. It is time to wake up. This is a battle for the future of our civilization. I can't put it any more plainly than that.
I agree. Now, I just want to give credit where credit's due, because all that video footage that Nigel Farage used as ex-post came from one particular account, an account who was on this story first, a brilliant online news organisation who breaks news, dares to go where very few people tread, run by a fantastic man called Stefan Thompson. He is the founder of Visegrad24. He joins us now. Steph, it is so great to have you on the show. You guys broke this first. It was your account that I looked at on X and I just went, holy boop! What is going on? Tell me, how did you get the footage? What have you seen? What else do you know? Because we're being kept in the dark by the legacy media.
Well, actually, I've been to Ceuta many years ago, and I stood on the Moroccan side of the border looking at the border fence with a group of illegal migrants. This was the summer of 2017, and I stood with a large group of men, Sub-Saharans, Libyans, Algerians, some Moroccans. There was a strategy at the time where the fence would be rushed by hundreds of people at the same time, and some of them would get over and then apply for refugee status. It's a place I spent some time in. I still have some contacts there. The content was a mix of people that I knew on the ground. Some of it was being sourced from Moroccan Facebook groups and Moroccan Telegram channels, where the illegals, however you want to call them, were posting a lot of it themselves. I mean, they were self-documenting. There was some incredible footage of one of the swimmers swimming with a selfie stick and simply filming himself for TikTok. So they're self-documenting their own crimes in many ways. Yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible scenes. To bounce back on what you said at the beginning, the real issue is that what we're seeing now is visually, I mean, it's very cinematographic, it's very shocking in its scale. But fundamentally, this is a drop in the bucket of the scale of illegal migration, legal and illegal migration that has come from the third world, from completely incompatible places, from sub-Saharan Africa, from North Africa, and from the Middle East, that has come to Europe over the last 3 decades. We're talking about perhaps 50,000 people, maybe. This pales in comparison to the 50 million Muslims who are already living on European soil.
Steph, I've got to ask you, because you are one of the only people I know who genuinely seems to understand journalism, who has his finger on the pulse, who goes, like I said, where other journalists dare not tread, and actually looks at OSINT, scours the Facebook groups, looks at news organisations in foreign countries, follows up on things rather than just sit munching over the latest campaigning lines from the left wing. What do you think went on yesterday? Because, let's be fair, 50,000 people didn't suddenly wake up and say, oh, do you know what? I might storm the border with Ceuta tomorrow. I might actually go and try and swim the ocean and end up in Spain. It's very clear to me that this has been choreographed at an extremely sophisticated level, which tends to suggest to me some sort of hostile state backing. Is it Morocco, or were their border force just having a nap? You talk about the mix of migrants who, you know, are corralled at that border fence, understandably so. Could it be the long arm of Algeria in all of this and their associates in China, Russia and Iran? What are you hearing from open source and intelligence and your sources on the ground?
Well, there's a mix of factors. On one hand, of course, it's the first place to blame is, of course, our own European elites and European softness that has in many ways encouraged this. That would certainly be the first place to start. If there was a strongman response to this, the border wouldn't have been breached. So we have Europeans have invited this, and they've invited this for decades. And you see this with the generous welfare systems that have been built all over the European continent. You see this with an incredibly lax approach to refugees. I mean, countless people entered European soil, ditched their papers in the Mediterranean Sea or even beforehand, and declared themselves to be of either teenagers when they were patently not teenagers, they were grown men. So European weakness would be the first thing to blame. Sanchez's very lax policies towards border control, incredibly lax policies towards illegal migration, the regularization of 500,000 people that was announced You said that it was 1.2 million people have applied so far. Politicians in Vox that I've spoken to estimate that it could be as many as 3 million people who will seek to be regularized over the coming months. So that on one hand. On the other hand, of course, we have the living conditions of the third world. If the welfare state in Europe offers a better standard of living than the vast majority of people have in third world countries, we've created a magnet, an irresistible magnet that people will be drawn to as long as it is possible to be drawn to it. So that's certainly one of the other reasons. Then we have the pardons in Morocco that took place. The King of Morocco will pardon criminals and will release them from prison. That's another element. And then, of course, there are disputes between the Moroccans and the Spaniards. The Spaniards have tried to maintain the peace, usually through financial incentives, for many, many years, including large amounts of foreign direct investments into the Moroccan economy. And this is a tool that the Moroccans are able to use and to deploy against Spain and against Western countries and against the European continent. One of the most interesting things to see online has been a number of anti-Western analysts, many of them Muslims, accusing this of being an Israeli way of punishing the Sanchez government. And the particular amusement of it was seeing Arab commentators saying this was an Anglo-Zionist Axis trick, and that Sanchez, who'd firmly stood with the Palestinian people, is now being punished. The problem that they didn't notice was that the punishment, of course, is sending Moroccans onto Spanish territory. So sort of Muslim analysts are calling their own population and sending their own population to Europe a punishment, which I thought was a rather amusing sort of lapse or self-admission to some of the many problems that majority Muslim countries have. But it appears to be a mix. The incentives on one hand that have been presented by the Spanish, and on the other hand, Moroccan brute force diplomacy.
But I mean, you pick up, it's interesting you say about, various Muslim commentators describing Muslims, breaching the borders into Europe as a problem, because it is being used as an act of grey zone warfare. For a long time, Erdogan in Turkey has played this game. Of course, Turkey being on the front line after wars in Syria, millions of refugees coming from the Middle East into Turkey, but he's always used it as a faucet he can play with, turn on, turn off, threaten Europe. If you don't give me what I want, all these people are going to come in your direction. And this has been a habit that is now being picked up by hostile states. We've seen Russia busing migrant men from Lord knows where through Belarus to the borders of Poland. And thankfully, Poland sensibly patrols its borders. We have seen the Chinese sending plane loads of people on a load of fentanyl down into Central America to storm the southern border of the United States. But why is it, despite this, despite headlines just the other day of the IRGC bragging that they've brought operatives into the United Kingdom across the Channel, do we have politicians who insist on calling these people asylum seekers?
It's unbelievable. Poland managed to put up a border fence. There was a border crisis that preceded the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine at the end of 2021. There were tens of thousands of migrants that had been weaponized by indirectly Putin's Russia and very directly by Lukashenko's Belarusian regime. And they were, as you identified correctly, they were literally bussed there, and the Belarusian secret services would physically push them on to the Polish border. The Poles deployed the army and stopped the vast majority of these people. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them are stopped. That crisis on the eastern NATO, eastern EU border is still ongoing. And tunnels are being built. They're being built into Lithuania. They're being built into Poland. So there is that entire eastern front is being constantly tested, and illegal migrants effectively have been weaponized. And the great tragedy is, of course, is one doesn't want to come across as a callous and unempathetic person. I of course understand. You listen to the videos of some of the Moroccans that had stormed the border of Ceuta are interviewed, and they're saying, we're here to seek a better life. There's no opportunities. There's nothing in Morocco. There's no work. There's no this. There's no that. And empathetic leftists will say, oh, well, you know, why not offer these people a slightly better life, or a shot at a better life at least? And the great issue is, of course, that this better life for these people, bear in mind, I am South African. I've spent a large swathe of my life on the African continent, from north to south, including in Morocco, spent a fair amount of time in Algeria as well. I've seen these things firsthand, and I have great empathy, and I have great sympathy for Africans in general. I've enjoyed a lot of the work that I've done on the African continent. But the betterment of their lives comes at the cost of a slightly worse life for all Europeans combined, until we are simply overwhelmed as a continent. There is a reason that Morocco looks the way it does and Spain looks the way it does. It is a series of concerted decisions taken over generations. It takes a very, very long time to build a civilization, to build a welfare state, to build a functioning high trust society. And it unfortunately takes perhaps less than a generation to turn a high trust country into essentially a third worldizing, Lebanon-style, South Africanized, global favelized type place. And this is exactly the risk that we are facing. And we are seeing in real time all of the promises that we were sold on multiculturalism. And oh, you'll be able to walk down the street and have a kebab here, and you'll have a paella there, and you'll have a curry over there. All of those promises, most of them based on the promise of cheap and affordable food that can be delivered to your home, and a rich culinary experience, because there's not really much else to multiculturalism, has turned out to be a complete and utter lie. And we are seeing in real time a rise in stabbings, a rise in rapes, a rise in petty violence, falling standards in school, issues with housing, an increasing frustration of indigenous European populations who are facing the daily struggles of mass migration and a slightly worsening living standard year by year.
Stefan, I absolutely adore you. Stefan Thompson, ladies and gentlemen. Now, credit where credit is due. If it was not for Visegrad and that brilliant operation that man runs and set up, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He has done so much and does so much day after day to put news stories out there that nobody else would touch. He gets the footage, he's got his contacts, he's been to the places, he's interviewed the people, he's got sources, he scours the OSINT. He is phenomenal. So if you make one good decision today, go and follow Visegrad 24. Now, listen, we're going to take a short break now. After the break, it'll be really good to catch up with some of you. So if you want to call the show, the number is 0344 499 1000. We're going to do a lot of calls, actually, towards the end of the show. At 12:30, we're going to be joined by Professor Anthony Glees, security and intelligence expert, to continue unpicking whether there are the long arms of hostile states and terrorist organisations into the storming of that Spanish enclave. Who's involved? What do they have to gain from it? I know the migratory flows are acts of grey zone warfare, but let's start getting some receipts on this. Don't take it from me. Let's take it from an expert. So you must stay tuned for that. But around that, we do want to hear from you. I think this is such an important topic. We need to discuss it. It doesn't matter. They may try and silence us. So I'm pointing at the other tellies in my studio, which shows the output from the BBC and Sky. They might not want to talk about it. Burnham might not want to talk about it. Badenoch might not want to talk about it. They ain't going to stop us talking about it, because we're talk, and that's what we do. So stay tuned. This is the home, not just of common sense. This is the home of truth. Back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Shall we all get together, hold hands, comfort one another through these hard times of the end of our civilization? Let's speak to Ash, who's in Plymouth. Good afternoon, Ash.
Good afternoon, Alex. How are you?
I don't know, really.
I know.
Not
really
sure,
scary,
if I'm honest with you. I've had better days. There'll be worse ones to come, that is for sure. In fact, I'll probably tell you right now, this is the best day of my life for the foreseeable future because things are not about to get better.
I tell you, it's so scary. I don't know how I sleep at night. And it's just, watching the news and watching all that today and yesterday is just, I'm so frightened, not just for me. My daughter, that's who I'm really frightened for. I'm so, just frightens me every single day. But what was obviously ringing up to tell you about the Moroccans that have broken into our complex abroad.
Go on then.
Yeah, so basically, sort of not far away from the complex is like a rundown hotel. And I think there's about 200 to 300 Moroccans in there potentially at the moment. I think the police are going to try to get rid of them because they're going to demolish the hotel. But unfortunately, they've managed, we don't know how, to get into our complex. And now what we're worried about is, now that one is in, that they're all going to try and come in.
You don't have to be precise on the location, but where are we talking about here in general?
It's in the Canaries. It's one of the Canary Islands.
Right, I see. Right, that makes sense because, of course, Western Sahara is not far away from the coast of the Canaries. I mean, this is actually, there's actually a word in Arabic that they're using, which is essentially the word for squatter, and this has now become a modus operandi, it seems, for Moroccans when they, break into a country, they take something over as a squatter and then use international law to say, well, it's ours now. And I guess that is what you're worried about.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, we cannot do anything about it. They just literally walk around the complex, how can I say it nicely, flipping the bird. I know they did try to, they tried to disconnect the electric. They've broken in and put it back on. They're going like sort of 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, just going over and using our communal barbecue to cook their food. And yeah, so we're obviously, we're not there all the time. We're in Plymouth and we're frightened to death, that they could break in and that's it. You work hard to buy a nice, family home, holiday home and now we're worried that they could break in and there's nothing you can do about it, nothing.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And that breaks my heart. I'm a huge fan of the Canary Islands. I spend a lot of time over there. I adore them. Yeah. And that's always been my dream, to go and sort of retire to a volcanic lair in the centre of Lanzarote. But I know as you go around the north edge of Lanzarote, sort of Playa Blanca, if you've got the radio on, all of a sudden it sort of switches off KISS, which is the station I listen to when I'm in the Canaries, and it picks up the Moroccan music. You start getting a lot of sort of Arabic chanting. You're like, what's going on here? But, it's funny. I've been to Morocco a lot. I go quite regularly. Yeah. It's a country I love. And one of the last times I was in Morocco, it was during Eid. And my mate John and I, we were in Casablanca, which is a bit of a grim port city, if I'm honest. But he lives in, has a place on the outskirts in a rather smart estate. And we were walking around trying to find somewhere to eat. But, of course, everyone was fasting during Ramadan and everything was closed. And then we walked past one restaurant. There appeared to be loads of people inside. And we looked through the window and these people said, come on in. And so we thought, oh, great, maybe we can eat here. We went in and we found out it was the staff party that they were holding in order to break the fast. And they said, sit down. What would you like? Gave us loads of food, translated everything into English, were teaching us their songs, we were dancing, we were celebrating, and I've never felt such kindness and hospitality in my life. And so I've had many mixed experiences in Morocco of meeting some of my favourite, most wonderful people ever. And then the scumbags in the souks who try and fleece you of your money and, you know, put their hands up your skirt. So there you go. Good and bad in every country, I guess. But there is now this emerging pattern of Moroccan squatters going into European territories near to their own land, breaking into buildings and refusing to leave. In the same way, I suppose, Costa del Crime was run by British gangsters. We've also exported our own form of criminality to other countries. It happens. But the difference is, it seems to me Europe doesn't stand up to the perpetrators of crimes when they happen to be non-European. Ash, I wish you the best of luck with this ongoing foray with your complex somewhere in the Canaries. Let's speak now to Matthew, who's in Warrington. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Hello, good morning. Oh, it's good afternoon, is it? Yes. Yeah, I'm worried. I'm very, very worried about just what's happening. You know, I've got 2 daughters, and these people are just coming over. You try to explain to a 17-year-old daughter, don't go in the park, stay in pairs. And it's frightening. And what worries me is that I do feel like there could be another kind of Lee Rigby experience, but a coordinated one where it's all done very all at once. And these politicians are going to have blood on their hands because it's going to go off, and then they're all going to hide. They're all going to hide behind their little fortresses and blame each other. And it's us, the people, the public, that are going to have to pick up the pieces. And we're going to have to see these. And everyone's on edge. You don't like walking the streets. You don't want your kids playing on the parks. You're worried who's standing outside your schools. I'm not saying that all these people are wrong-uns by a long way. Mostly, maybe a lot, most of them are decent people, but it just takes one. We've got enough of our own problems without making it a lot bigger. And that, 50,000 people just coming over in the sea, that is an invasion. We're going to have police we're going to have police patrolling our streets like we did when I was in Ulster. We would patrol the streets in the satellite, in the police officers in the Republican areas. The IRA and the Royalists, they've already declared war on the immigrants. It's publicly saying it on Instagram, on TikTok. You see the videos. So it's a ticking time bomb, and I'm frightened. I'm frightened for our great nation. And where's our politicians? Why don't they all get together, do a COBRA meeting, and say, right, enough is enough. This is a crisis. It's an absolute crisis.
It is astonishing to me how silent the political establishment are, because they have nothing to say on the matter. That's the problem. And it is a crisis, and you are right to be worried for the security and the safety of your kids and their kids and their kids, because I don't know what sort of country we're going to be leaving them, if I'm honest with you. And like I said, there's always a lag time on these things. I'd be interested to find out whether any controls are now put in place, or whether Sueta, I think is how you say it in Spanish. I'm just call it Sueta because, I don't really like to speak Spanish, so I don't want to ham up an accent that I don't naturally have. I'll be interested to see whether that flow is ongoing, actually. How many more get in by the close of play? What happens to them? Where they then move to? No, you're right about everything, Matthew. We really are at doom hour. I just don't know what we're going to do about it. All right, on that happy note, thank you for your call. Let's do some messages. Neil says, as usual, this will not get read out. Oh, turns out it's going to be. But the invasion into Spain is the lead story in the Daily Telegraph. Of course it is. It's a common-sense right-wing member of the media. So the legacy media are covering it. OK, when I say legacy media, I largely refer to the broadcasting channels as the more established broadcasting channels, let's say. And every now and then the BBC run a headline, but they've not really covered it in any detail. Sky can't be bothered talking about it at all. Manchester mayoral election. Labour are now rigging the election process. Just goes to show you can't trust the Labour Party and its Messiah. When the people say enough is enough, will the Messiah call out the army for martial law? I don't know. I think he wouldn't sort of, summon his own end. But there is something so disturbing and cynical about changing the franchise, changing the nature of the plebiscite at the Greater Manchester mayoral election. Having called it, having known you're going to call it, having rigged it to make sure that when you change the way it's done, that you win it again. Well, let's see. The results aren't out yet. But like I said, I'm pretty sure they're therefore using Greater Manchester as a rigging laboratory. They're doing a little bit of R&D to see if the transferable vote will keep them in power. If it does, it'll be there at the general election, mark my words. Afternoon, Alex. You're echoing my thoughts exactly about all that's going on. To make you even more perfect, I'd like to be the first talk presenter to nail the pronunciation. Ian calls it Quetta, Kevin calls it Sueta, Peter says Suta. In Spanish, especially in southern Spain, it is actually pronounced Ceuta, or Ceuta further north, Ceuta. I think I've sort of vaguely been saying that. I'm afraid I don't have a grasp of Spanish at all. Fluent in French, but alas, that is it. I hope you have lots of nice things lined up for the weekend, and I hope you can remain strong for your own peace of mind, says Andrea in North London. Guess what, Andrea? I'm here. Saturday and Sunday, 10 till 1, so we can hang out together a little bit more. Then after that, I'm going to take a well-earned 4-day break after 10 days on the trot. Maybe the time is now for the intervention of the United States, because they're the only ones who can intervene to stop the Islamic invasion. I'm sure they must be considering this also. What do you think, says Alison in Cardiff. Oh, Trump has been saying over and over and over again. Ironically, it was about the day before the crisis in Ceuta, that Donald Trump did actually say something in the Oval Office about the invasion of Europe. And there it is, happening in real time. Grumpy Mike, great name, says, can we get a referendum on illegal immigrants detailed in such a way that MPs must make the referendum law and judges must apply it in full without fear nor favour? No more getting to stay here because of chicken nuggets. I'm afraid we can have a referendum. Those often don't go well. But what we need to do is leave the ECHR and get rid of the Human Rights Act and get rid of the entire network of NGOs and get rid of all of the footprints and the fingerprints and the detritus that has been built up in our statute books, in the canon of law, in civic society for decades now. We need a purge. Dan from Kent says, you need a break, Alex, and you totally deserve it. 7 days on the trot with today's politics. You're earning $1. 8 days on the trot, 2 more to go. And I'm earning pounds. Not many of them. Hey, the leader of Spain's Ceuta estimates show 60,000 have crossed so far. This is an enclave of 85,000. 60,000. And someone sent a message saying 49,000 invaded Spain yesterday. We now know it's 60,000. Put that into perspective. The British Army has approximately 19,000 deployable frontline soldiers at any time. That's how many we're going to have crossing the channel tomorrow, no doubt. Right. OK, let's take a short break now, because after the break, I'm joined by Professor Anthony Glees, security and intelligence expert, because I really want to pick his brains about who might be behind this, because looking online, hundreds of Facebook groups have been coordinating this with hashtags and instructions. It is not the case, I'm sorry, but by magic of osmosis or some sort of, I don't know, whatever, psychic interaction, 60,000 people have all gone, I know what I fancy doing today, breaking into Spain. There's always sophisticated coordination behind this, and there has been over the irregular immigration flows for well over a decade. It is a function of grey zone warfare. We're going to dig into that and get out as much information as we can from Professor Anthony Glees after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, got some breaking news. Spain's Prime Minister has spoken. Pedro Sanchez says the arrival of almost 50,000, well, 60,000 now, son, and counting, migrants in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta in just 24 hours is a violation of Spain's territorial integrity. You don't say. He's also described it as an attack, and says the Spanish government will use all of its resources to guarantee the safety of Ceuta. Madrid is speeding up the repatriation of migrants. So I don't know how that quite works, considering that the Supreme Court of Spain earlier this month ruled that migrants intercepted at sea while attempting to reach Ceuta or Melilla cannot be summarily returned under the enclave special border rejection regime. So I think, Mr. Sanchez, Senor Sanchez, you might need to go and have a chat with your Supreme Court, who I'm guessing, a bit like ours, are the authority above yours, because they might tell you can't do that. Sunshine. Good luck anyway, I hope you can. Let's speak now to Professor Anthony Glee, security and intelligence expert. Anthony, I've been banging on for ages and years about these migratory flows, the exodus coming out of sub-Saharan Africa. So many are controlled by Wagner mercenaries, the Africa Corps, also by terrorist organisations, whether you're looking at the Mujahideen or Boko Haram. Same coming from the Middle East. The Taliban make a pretty penny making fake documents. They even write little letters for Afghans, go, we're going to kill you, Mohammed. And he can take that letter, hand it over to somebody when he arrives in Dover and say, see, you've got to give me asylum. Terrorist organisations are making a packet from this. It's how they also get their operatives into Europe. These people are not asylum seekers. They're being used as weapons of war. Of that, I'm convinced. You're the security expert. Can you put more meat on the bones?
Well, Alex, it's a very important question. And the European Union faces a big crisis. And as you implied in something you said earlier, the chances are that the crisis that the European Union is facing will impact us here in the UK in due course. Because once these people are inside the European Union and cannot be returned to where they came, then by the same logic, they can end up on the channel ports and find themselves on small boats trying to get into the UK. So all these things are possible. And I do think, as both the Spanish Prime Minister and, more importantly, the Italian Prime Minister have indicated, this is not just a really big crisis for the European Union, but it is time for them to reconsider the Schengen Agreement, the sort of idea of borderless travels within the confines of the European Union, but also to rethink the errors that they have been making ever since 2015. And I have to say, I was one of the few pointy-headed academics who said in 2015, when Frau Merkel, the then German Chancellor, said, you know, we welcome 1.5 million people, largely from Syria and Iraq. We welcome you to Germany. We'll deal with these issues. I said it was complete madness, total madness, to take in at a stroke 1.5 million people about whom the German authorities knew nothing. And I warned then that this would be likely a terror opportunity for a small number, but a significant number of people in that 1.5 million who had malign intentions towards Germany and Europe. And I warned too that once they were in Germany, they could go anywhere in the European Union. Now, you know, there are lots of voices in the wilderness and nobody like people who say, I told you so. But nobody was interested in it. MEPs weren't interested in border security in 2015, and they better jolly well get interested in it now, or there will be a big implosion. You also, very correctly in my view, Alex, raised the question of how you get 60,000 people, more or less within 24 hours, to get into Ceuta, however you want to pronounce, but I think formally it's called Ceuta, in North Africa, in Morocco, and thence into the European Union. That doesn't just happen by itself. It's a coordinated action, and where you're dealing with a coordinated action to break the law, you're dealing with a conspiracy. And where you're dealing with a conspiracy, you need to use all the security apparatus you have to get to the bottom of who is behind that. In my opinion, we're likely to find the same sort of people behind the suitor influx that we are beginning to find behind the small boats crossing across the channel. And just to get it in perspective, in the UK so far, we've had about 13,000 people since the beginning of the year crossing the channel in small boats. And to give the Home Secretary her due, she is getting rid of a lot of them. She's stopping the boat by 40%, and I think that's true. But in the case of Ceuta, it's 60,000 people, so far more than come to Britain in a year in 24 hours. Now that's been organised, and it's been organised by possibly Kurdish groups. Remember, these are Muslim people who are coming across the border. And I would say just one other thing. I doubt if it's coincidence that this happened on what was the Moroccan king's national day, when Moroccans were called upon to celebrate, I think King Mohammed VI, to celebrate his accession to the throne. So there's a political aspect to all these people doing this, and it's left Schengen and the European border controls in tatters. Brits are there queuing because of the new passport controls to go on holiday to the European Union. And there you've got 60,000 young Morocco. I mean, some of them seem like kids, and their mums and dads will be wanting them home for their tea. But you've got 60,000 people coming in 24 hours. If that isn't madness, then people no longer know what madness means.
Do we need to have a very serious conversation about the function of social media in all of this? Because hundreds of Facebook accounts have been ascribed as promoting this, how to do it, when to go. We certainly know that people traffickers use Snapchat, TikTok, things such as Telegram to flaunt their wares, organise illegal boat crossings. And yet every time someone talks about social media, and it might be a serious topic, but it's about, oh, well, we shouldn't allow 16-year-old kids on it. It might be harmful for their mental health. Now, I agree with that, as it happens, but I'm not hearing anybody dragging the likes of Mark Zuckerberg in front of Parliament to say, oi, son, your platform is being used for people trafficking.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. And again, you know, people like me, nobody elects us, and as I say, you know, we're boring old professors and this and that, but we've been banging on about the dangers of American social media for a long time. It's not coincidence that the group, we're told some families are amongst the 60,000 going round the border in Ceuta, but chiefly they are the TikTok generation we're seeing, grinning and laughing. They've got, you know, no idea probably what they're doing. They are following a message. That message is being delivered by platforms that are run from the United States of America for profit of extremely rich people who want to get even richer. And every time anybody says, no, we need to control the social media, you have people like Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, popping up and saying, oh, it's free speech. You know, if we want to tell people to get into the European Union, that's our right to do so. That's unacceptable. You need to have controls, but you also need effective countermeasure.
But it's criminality. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's being coordinated online or if someone's handing out flyers for the next dinghy to cross from Calais on the street. It's criminal behaviour. It's interesting that you talk about the American social media platforms, but you mentioned TikTok. And TikTok, of course, banned in various American states because they regard it as one giant psyop, largely used, actually, is my understanding, by people traffickers in order to flaunt their wares of getting in small boats coming over to the United Kingdom, because China is a major security threat. And on that topic, we had the breaking news today that, guess what? They get to build their mega embassy just down there over the quantum computing cable, where they can earwig on whatever's going on in the City of London and do Lord knows what else. Do we have to have a conversation about banning TikTok?
Well, we definitely need to have a conversation about TikTok. We definitely need to have a conversation about the Wild West media, but we also need to have a conversation about our national security. I think our new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, I have to say, I think he's made quite a good impression. He's a good speaker. He's got charm, unlike his predecessor. He said that many things were done wrong. Now, one thing in particular that was done wrong by Sir Keir Starmer was to give the Chinese permission to build this super embassy. That, too, is madness. It will serve to not only allow the Chinese to act out their nefarious interests here in the United Kingdom, it will serve as a hub for all Chinese intelligence activities in the whole of Europe. That's why it's a super embassy. They will spy on us. They will spy on people in Europe. And yes, we do need to look into the influence of malign actors, be they states, Russia, number one, Iran, almost joint number one now, and China, and criminal gangs who are recruiting non-ideological young people using Telegram in particular, but other social media, the dark web. They're recruiting them to carry out acts of sabotage. What the Director General of MI5, I think he's a very good chap, Sir Ken McCullum, says mayhem and havoc being carried out on our streets by these mindless idiots who will take money in order to disrupt our way of life here in the UK and in the European Union. And I am absolutely certain that somewhere in this fabric of conspiracies that are getting people to storm the borders of the European Union and make it look increasingly porous, somewhere you will find threads from Russia, threads from Iran, and threads from China, because they are all doing what these malign powers want to do. And in a recent case, we've seen with this Norwegian chappie who came to Britain, he was prepared to kill somebody, had no ideological interest at all. And not at all. But through Telegram, he was told he'd get 21,000 quid if he killed somebody. A Swedish group wanted to have eliminated. Fine, he said. The people who firebombed property owned by Sir Keir Starmer, houses, a car, Honda he'd once had, they did this for hard cash, paid in cryptocurrency over the internet. So we've got to get real. This is a new threat. It's a 21st century threat. And the people targeted are the young groups, 15 to 30-year-old people. And we know a very large proportion of them are up for acts of violence. Some 20% of them will do these things. So money, conspiracy, and we look totally defenseless. And that's why hard action is needed. All these people should be sent back by Spain at once. Okay, have a court discussion. They can have that court discussion from Morocco.
Yeah, no, I agree. Get it done, ship them back, send them back from whence they came, and guess what? If your Supreme Court start crying into their pillows at night, deal with them down the line. This is too much of an emergency. Professor Anthony Glees, thank you ever so much for filling us in on all of that fascinating information. Guess what? Andy Burnham has spoken about immigration. He's made a comment on what's gone on in Ceuta. Should we find out what he said? Well, apparently, it's not that good. In fact, it could be very bad. You got to laugh. Apparently, the UK government has offered support to Spain after thousands of migrants crossed into Ceuta in North Africa. What support? What are we going to say, do they want to come here? Got a few HMOs going spare right now. Don't you worry about having houses built for our own people stuck on lists. Let's get these young kids over, shall we? Is that the sort of support we're looking at? Or are you going to send our non-existent, I don't know, naval vessel down? Right? Is that what we're doing? Sending the Royal Navy? Oh, yeah, they can't leave the dry dock. What support? I want to know what this looks like. You can't just say, oh, yeah, nice words as always. We're going to show solidarity and support. What? It's our money, it's our resources, it's our security. What? Pray, speak, man. Open your mouth. You jabbered on for an hour the other day about your father and care homes. Tell us what you're going to do about this emergency. I'm waiting. I'll see if I can find out during the advert break. See you on the other side.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, I looked. We don't know yet. We've just got a little line on PA saying that UK government has offered support to Spain after thousands of migrants crossed into Ceuta in North Africa. I have a feeling it isn't going to be sending our military to help drive these people back from whence they came. I don't know, just a sort of loosey-goosey prediction there. I mean, you know, blow me down if he does, good on you if he does, but somehow I have a feeling he won't. I'll have to enjoy that little piece of information when I'm on the train back to the West Country. Let's speak now to Leslie, who's in the Wirral. Hi, Leslie.
Hello.
Hi, what's on your mind?
I'm standing in the street because I'm actually having a coffee in a coffee shop with a friend, and we've been discussing exactly what I was going to talk to you about.
Oh, tell me.
Well, I'm 72 years of age, and I feel that I am a triple public enemy #1 person because I'm white, I'm female, and I'm retired. And so the government either want to starve me to death or take away everything I've got so I won't be able to afford to live in my own home. And if I get fed up with that, well, they can always euthanize me. So, you know...
Well, at least Andy Burnham said something relatively commonsensical about the assisted dying bill, saying it's the wrong time to discuss it, considering the health service is on its knees. I thought that was at least, you know, a sensible volte-face.
Yeah, it just makes you feel that you're absolutely worthless and you're just a nuisance, and the pension that you've worked for all your life is now a benefit, and you're just a benefit scrounger. And it's, excuse me, like the DPD man, it goes backwards and makes a funny noise with his... yeah, so it's got me depressed. It's got me to a stage where I'm trying not to listen to the news anymore because it does make you feel as if the world has gone completely bonkers. And, you know, as an elderly person, you're not going to toe the line of the narrative that they all want you to speak along, and therefore they want rid of you.
Oh, Leslie, my darling, I totally sympathise with how you're feeling. Leslie's my mum's name and my middle name, by the way, so a wonderful name you have there. But look, I just think, yes, we are going to hell in a handcart. It's going to be pretty bad for my generation, even worse for the generation coming up after my generation. And Lord knows if there'll even be a generation of our civilisation after that. So do you know what I suggest to people? Somehow, every day, find something that delights you. Spend time with people that you love. Do the things that you enjoy and try and take advantage of what is left of this amazing civilization that I was blessed to be born in. I will continue to fight for it because I realise how lucky I am to have been part of it for the 42 years I've got to benefit from being British. It is something worth fighting for, and so every day, go for a coffee with a friend, see your family, hug your kids, and just enjoy while you can, because I definitely feel that, sadly, the clock is ticking. Leslie, thank you ever so much. You know, I just said it's always important to spend time with the people that you love. Yeah. Oh, well, I've only got Ian Collins.
I was feeling quite happy till I came in. I thought somebody had died.
Well, yeah, our civilization.
Of course it hasn't. We're fine. We're Brits. We're made of strong stuff. We fight back. We don't take any jip when it really comes to it. We have politicians come and go, the Burnhams and the Mays of this world. There's a reset on the way, the Great Reset, not Klaus's one.
Now, when I came off air yesterday, I was on the train when I started looking on X as I do, and suddenly saw the video footage of what was going on in Ceuta and went, holy beep, what is this? And we're straight on the phone to Ted, Dean, going, we're going to do the whole show on this, max it. But I think you actually broke it while you were on air.
Yeah, what I didn't realise, and this is interesting, is a friend of mine spent a lot of time in the summer down on the Costa del Sol, so literally just over the water. This has been going on all week. In smaller numbers, but even he keeps his eye on the news down there, so he knows what's happening locally. Nothing, not a peep on this.
It's funny, they're barely covering it on legacy broadcast.
Which is kind of interesting. So it was smaller numbers, but nonetheless it was still happening and significant enough to make the local